Borough Council's Community and External Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Matt Campbell, Chair of the committee, and we'll do introductions in a moment. We have committee members in the Civic Centre along with officer support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and will be available on the Council's website. Some housekeeping for those in the Civic Centre. There are no fire drills planned, and if the alarm goes off, please leave by the emergency exits and congregate on the rear car park. Please turn mobile phones off and switch your microphones off when not speaking. For those joining us via Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. We are very grateful to our guests for attending this special meeting, which I'll mention more in a moment. Please can I ask each member of the committee to introduce themselves, followed by officers.
Good evening. My name's Councillor Pritchard. I'm a ward member for Lostock Hall. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Councillor Keith Martin. I represent Middlefirth Ward near Kingsfold. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Councillor Lou Jackson. I represent Earnshaw Bridge.
Hello, I'm Councillor Elaine Stringfellow, Councillor for Lostock Hall Ward.
Hello, I'm Ben Story, Democratic Member Services Officer.
Hello, I'm Darren Cranshaw, Head of Democratic Services.
Thank you, everybody. I'm also a ward member for Walton-le-Dale West. Moving on, item 1, apologies. We've received apologies from Councillor Hayden Williams, but we are happy to welcome Councillor Elaine Stringfellow as a substitute. Councillor Joan Burrows will be arriving slightly late. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members have got any interest to declare? No, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, the 21st of January 2026. Members are asked to approve the minutes of the last meeting for signing by the Chair. Is everybody happy to approve? Thank you very much. Item 4, recommendations update. Members are asked to review the recommendation update and remove the items that are complete from the table. Is everybody happy for that to be done? Thank you very much. So item 5, sewage and water pollution in South Ribble. The committee are very grateful to the Environment Agency and United Utilities for attending the meeting in September 2024 and for their commitment to come along to this meeting this evening. The committee remains interested in the subject of sewage and water quality because residents and councillors continue to raise it as a serious issue for our communities. We've recently been contacted by those who have watched the Channel 4 programme Dirty Business, expressing concern that this might be happening more widely. The committee is looking forward to finding out more about the important work of the Environment Agency and United Utilities on sewage and water quality in the borough. I will invite each organisation in turn and ask them to introduce themselves, the role of their organisation, and say a few words by way of introduction on the issue before opening it up for committee members to ask questions, followed by members of the council not on the committee and any members of the public. To make the best use of time, I'm proposing to allocate up to 50 minutes with each organisation, followed by up to 10 minutes for members not on the committee and the public. So, and the Environment Agency, Dolores Owen and Andy Brown, have kindly forwarded us some slides which have been circulated to members of the committee. Would you be able to just briefly go through the slides, not a long presentation, if that's okay?
Yep.
Then we've got more time for questions. So if you could just introduce yourselves, give us a brief overview, and then we'll get into questions, if that's okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll start us off, Chair. So the first couple of slides in that deck are broader introductory slides for us as an organisation. So I'll start with those. But just for me personally, since Dolores and colleagues were here with you back in September 24, I took over about a year ago as North West leader for the Environment Agency for all of our teams that carry out our regulatory work in relation to United Utilities and sewage. Okay, so that's teams that cover from nearly Stoke up to nearly Gretna and everything east and west in between, from the coast up to the top of the Pennines. So all of that activity is luckily with me. So hopefully I can help you along with Dolores, that leads one of those local teams for us here in Lancashire. I guess I just will start by talking a bit more about the Environment Agency as a whole, so we can go to to the next slide. This is a bit wordy, so I won't go through every word on here, but it tries to just describe and show our overall goal is about playing our part locally and nationally in delivering change for a better environment and creating places that are healthy and thriving, both from an environmental perspective but also from a social and an economic perspective, with the environment being a fundamental underpinning part of economy, health and all sorts of other things. And you see in here our work broadly splits into 3 big chunks, so healthy air, land and water, sustainable growth and a nation resilient to climate change. So people might be aware that although sewage is a thing that at the moment gathers a lot of interest, we do some other really important work for places, including here in Lancashire and Leyland, South Ribble. So whether it be our work as asset managers in terms of operating flood defences, building new flood defences like the scheme down on the Ribble, which is one of our biggest current investments in the country, never mind Lancashire. Whether it be our part in emergency response within the Local Resilience Forum, whether it be our role in regulating other industries outside of the water company from pollution or air discharges, whether it be about waste management and waste crime, organised crime, etc., but also about providing advice and guidance to parties, but also to local authorities through the planning process and a range of other important opportunities that we use to help achieve that goal of thriving places. So that's us more broadly. If I just start to zoom in a little bit before Dolores takes in, I'll just talk briefly about water in a broader sense as opposed to just sewage. So we do quite a lot of different things on water, and I've just tried to show them here in a very simplified sense just to try to get that across. So if I start at the top, we do a large amount of monitoring. So we monitor for the quality of the water, both from discharges from regulated parties, but also the background quality of our rivers, lakes and seas to help inform the work that we do and the requirements we make of others. We monitor the quantity of water. Is there too much? Is it about to flood? Is there too little? Is there a drought coming? But we also do a lot of monitoring for nature, whether it be what is the fish population in the river, what is the insect population, etc. We also set the rules in terms of the permits that we give to people for their ability to legally discharge into the water environment. So that's another big area of permitting. We do a lot of work, what we call water planning. So that isn't just engaging with yourselves as a planning authority, but this is taking a bigger look at the water availability that we might have over a longer period, 20, 30 years, and talking about how much water the environment can afford and how much a place needs economically, and also from sewage, etc., trying to work out how you do that long-term planning to support as a critical infrastructure to development and thriving places. Dolores will come to a second. That another obvious big chunk for us is about compliance. So in plain English, sticking to the rules, trying to be upfront and help people stick to the rules in the first place, checking that they are, and if they're not, taking appropriate action, which is the next chunk on here, which is enforcement. And then finally, regulation is a critical, important part of what we do in water, but it isn't the only place where we play and operate and influence. We are also active in partnerships where we are supporting and helping others deliver improvements and protection of the environment through non-regulatory methods and approaches. So I hope that, Chair, just gives you a quick reminder and flavour of the Environment Agency as a whole and our work on generally on water. And Dolores will now just take over to talk you through a few things specifically about water companies and more detail.
Yes, thanks, Andy. So I'm one of the team leaders and I lead a team that does the inspections and compliance monitoring for the water industry across Lancashire. Before I go into detail about that, I've also got some slides about the general water quality in South Ribble, first of all. So, as Andy's mentioned in his presentation there, we do a lot of monitoring of water bodies, and including the chemical composition and ecological, and that gives us this picture of health across the county. This diagram shows the current Water Framework Directive status of the rivers in South Ribble. The vast majority of South Ribble water courses are classed as moderate status, with also some at poor. So the red streak on that diagram is Tara Car Gutter, which is south of Longton. And we're aiming to get all of our water courses up to good status. So we are, as the Environment Agency has to put action plans in place to get water courses up to that status. And at the moment we're working through all of our water bodies to get them to that stage. So we're looking at what actions are needed. So those actions might be improvements in agricultural practices, water quality improvements from water company discharges and private sewage works, and also urban runoff. So we're working through putting a plan together to see what's needed to get the water bodies up to good status. Tara Car Gutter, the red one on there, features in improvements through my presentation, so we can demonstrate what we're doing for that. Last time we were here, we talked about an ongoing pollution incident on the River Lostock, near to the Lancashire Business Park and adjacent to residents on Bispam Avenue. Unfortunately, we're still working through trying to find out what the source of that oil is. The business park have been doing surveys of their drains and have located an unmarked surface water point which discharges into the River Lostock. So the next step is for them to do more investigation, and we'll be catching up with them about that over the next few weeks to see what can be done and what's been found. So I just wanted to highlight to you, if your residents are still kind of talking to you about that, it's still on our radar and we're still trying to resolve it. So my next slides are about water company regulations, so the bread and butter of my team. My team carries out a range of activities, including inspections, data analysis, incident investigations, and where needed, enforcement activities as well. This photo is some of my team checking whether an outfall is affecting the quality of the River Darwen. Last time I was here, we were ramping up our recruitment and building on our inspections that we'd done. This year, we have a target across the country to do 10,000 inspections of water company assets. And within the North West, we've done 1,413 so far. That covers sewage works, combined sewer outfalls, and pumping stations, so all transmitting sewage across the North West. These inspections have led to non-compliance actions that have been given to United Utilities to put things right in terms of spillage and infrastructure at those assets. And we've identified where spills have occurred. So the actions are generated and followed up to ensure that they're rectified within a timely manner, and where we don't feel that's happening or where the breaches are more serious, we can use notices and prosecutions for the most serious offences. These are the inspections that we've done this year, 2025 to 26, in South Ribble. Apologies, that might not be too clear for you. But we've done 20 inspections in the borough. That includes 3 wastewater treatment works, 7 pumping stations and 10 combined sewer outfalls. We've raised 8 actions for United Utilities, and so far 5 have been confirmed to be completed. We will be revisiting some of these next quarter, including Leyland wastewater treatment works. We need to follow up on some actions for their storm tank storage, which can impact on the environment. So that'll be one of our high priorities for next quarter. Zooming in specifically to Walton Le Dale sewage works, last summer we were notified by your environmental health officers of complaints of odour from that sewage works. Odour doesn't form part of our environmental permit, so ultimately it is for your environmental health to deal with. However, we did send officers to go and investigate what had happened and if we could contribute to any solutions. And what we did find was a large pile of chicken manure near the entrance of the sewage works, which we believed to be the source of that odour. So that was dealt with by our agriculture team. But it is on our radar as the weather gets hotter that it might become an issue again. And we'll, of course, keep in touch with environmental health about that. So moving on to unpermitted spills of sewage and how we use the data on spills. So across United Utilities, we've attended for 249 pollution incidents to investigate sewage inputs from United Utilities. We do that in and out of hours as our response to our environmental hotline number, which I can provide if you want to share that. We can now also see how often and for how long dry day spills are occurring. So they're spills that are non-permitted that we need to investigate and take action and ensure United Utilities are acting upon. So that we can now see much more detail about those overflows. We're also using that data to focus our inspections and prioritise the work we do. So we'll be focusing on the sites where there are long durations and high frequency of spills on dry days. Across South Ribble, you've got 43 permitted storm discharges, and we have identified a particular one which has which needs investigating further, which is at Havelock Road near Bamber Bridge. So that again will be part of our programme for next year. So we'll look at the data in a bit more depth. We'll go in and inspect the CSO and find out the reasons for the spills and then take action if necessary. Moving on to what happens when there are breaches. So we've recruited some new dedicated enforcement roles to look at prosecutions and investigations for United Utilities. We've currently got 27 live investigations. None of those are in South Ribble. We've got 3 cases coming to court in 2026. And we recognise that sometimes it can be a frustration about how long it takes to get cases into court, but that isn't always in our hands. That just depends on court availability and how cases are prioritised by the Department of Justice. As well as prosecutions, we've also got other forms of enforcement that we can take. So other powers we can use are notices to bring sites back into compliance, which we do use on a regular basis. The next thing I wanted to highlight was something which will help drive improvements on Taracar Gutter, which was one of the ones which came up as poor ecological status. So an enforcement undertaking was offered by United Utilities in relation to a breach that they had in Hesketh Bank. An enforcement undertaking is a voluntary, legally binding agreement offered by United Utilities to the Environment Agency. It's an admission of guilt, but instead of going to court and through that court process, some money is directed into the environment to help improve what was damaged by the original offence. So for this, United Utilities paid $750,000 to several organisations to help with monitoring of the local area, to provide advice and improvements to farms, and a lot of that focuses around Tara Car gutter. Ben also mentioned to me that you wanted an update on our extending enforcement options that are being brought about by the Special Measures Act 2025. So this slide is a summary of the 6 key changes and enforcement measures that will be available to us. So it brings in a package of measures that will come in force over time to give the Environment Agency stronger powers to hold water companies to account. Stronger enforcement powers, more accountability and more data transparency. So taking them one by one, for cost recovery, we can now recover the full costs of our enforcement work from the water companies through a new levy. So that means we're less reliant on government funding, and that has enabled us to employ some more environment officers. Corporate liability, so we've now got new obstruction offences, which means that directors and executives of United Utilities can be prosecuted where it's found that offences occurred because of their consent, connivance or personal neglect. And the penalties have also gone up to 2 years imprisonment and unlimited fines. In terms of monitoring of overflows, water companies are now to install a further 7,000 emergency overflow data points so that we can extend the monitoring information we get about overflows of sewage into our rivers. So that strengthens our ability to hold the water companies to account. We've also got 2 new options for civil penalties. So civil penalties and automatic penalties will be coming to us, and they have a lower burden of proof than our existing enforcement powers and will enable quicker and more proportionate responses to moderate to minor offences. And lastly, the water companies now have a statutory duty to produce an annual pollution incident reduction plan. So previously, United Utilities have been providing that, but now it becomes statutory. So the companies and executives can face liability for non-compliance with those pollution incident reduction plans. So some of these measures are already in place for us, which includes the cost recovery and corporate liability parts of the Act, and other penalties are still awaiting a government consultation before they can be implemented. My final couple of slides are about water company investment plans. So alongside my team doing the enforcement and regulation, we also have teams who input strongly into what United Utilities investment plan is, and they're plans that run across a 5-year time span. At the moment we're in AMP8. So the Environment Agency has designed what the requirements should be for that investment based upon the need to improve our rivers, lakes and bathing waters, and we've required specific actions that are based on the need to comply with environmental legislation. So across the country there are 24,000 actions requiring an investment of 22 billion. And that will tackle pollution, improve water quality and reduce spills. So what does that mean for South Ribble? Again, sorry, this might not show up too well for you. What the AMP will provide for South Ribble is phosphate reductions in Tara Car gutter from Longton wastewater treatment works, enhanced solid quality surveillance at Blackburn sewage works, and 25 investigations into intermittent discharges to the River Lostock and many brooks, Tara Car gutter, and the River Ribble. That is across 3 wastewater treatment works and 22 CSOs. So there, we'll let United Utilities share more detail about those, but they're the improvements that we've had input into. I'm sure you've got many questions for us, so I'll switch my mic off now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Very, very much appreciated. So please could you expand upon the regulatory role of the Environment Agency in charging United Utilities on sewage discharges in South Ribble? How many non-permitted spills have there been this year in South Ribble? And how much have United Utilities been fined this year, if you've got that information to hand?
But I think from my perspective, the spill data for 2025 is currently unverified, so our teams are still doing the work in the background to be able to confirm exactly what that is, because you can imagine it's quite a large volume of data that we get supplied to us, which we then have to analyse and work through. So I'm not in a position, I don't think today, where I could give you that exact figure for 2025, but my commitment is that as soon as we can happily provide that information, or we can give you the best information we have preceding 25 if that would be of help or interest. Dolores will correct me, but for South Ribble, I don't think in the last year we have taken any prosecutions in relation to United Utilities in the South Ribble area, and therefore there aren't any fines to record in terms of that question. I guess, you know, the broader question about our role here is pretty much that it's our job to look at the state of the water environment and the future needs that places need in terms of treatment for wastewater and the supply of water from our taps, and to be able to interpret and understand that, to steer and direct the necessary required long-term investments in using our bill payers' money over generations to pay for that. So that's a big part of that job that we just heard there at the very end, is steering and requiring that investment. Second part, obviously, clearly is about compliance, about sticking to the rules. And maybe just to add a bit more flavour to some of this, there was a picture there taken at night time of one of Dolores' teams crouched down on the floor looking at a hole in the ground, which is Lancaster Lane here at Leyland. And I can tell that for sure, because I was the one that took that photo. And I took that photo at 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. So we do this at all times of the week and at all times of day as we need to, because it's no good just turning up to a site at the same time on the same day every week or every month, whatever. You've got to go at varying different times to see different conditions. And those inspections that we do, some of them we will say we want to go to that particular site in advance. On other occasions, company colleagues to my right, I'm sure will confirm, we don't tell them. We'll tell them, for example, okay, we'll meet you in the Civic Centre car park here in Leyland, and when we meet you there, then we will tell you where we are going. So they don't have the chance to be able to, shall we say, put the best lick of paint on before you arrive, because the last thing we want as a regulator is to turn up and see that everything is smelling perfectly brand new paint, because that's not the real world necessarily. I guess the other bit that we play really importantly is about compliance, and sticking to the rules is really important, but part of my job with the team is to advocate to the company to be on the front foot. I want them to be finding problems before we find them, and them to be acting on them before we have to tell them to act on them. That's my position, and we've been very clear to the company that our default expectation is compliance with your permit is what I expect, full stop. And in that same sense, we're increasingly focused on what we would call asset health. So if, a bit like your car, if you don't manage and maintain it, then it's inevitable sooner or later you're going to fail the MOT. You're going to break down. So I want to see evidence that they are consistently investing time and effort and energy in maintaining those assets to ensure that they work first time all the time, and that we aren't having to respond to incidents when things fail or break down. Now, clearly sometimes mechanical things do break down, etc. So I also want to see good, strong contingency plans for how they're going to deal swiftly and effectively with that. And then the final thing I think is really about spill reductions and incidents. So my expectation is, and I've said this very clearly to the company, I want to see United Utilities as being in that best performing space in water companies. I expect them to go from being where they were, which was not great, to being one of the best companies in terms of the amount of spills that is reduced and the volume and duration of those spills. To me, that is perfectly reasonable expectation that we have. And in a similar sense, I want to see a much bigger improvement in the reduction in the number of incidents. And so that's my other expectation, is that they are at the top end of performance of all companies in that same space, and that part of our job is to hold them to those expectations day in, day out.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, if you could gather that evidence and send the information I requested, if you could put something together and send that through. In terms, you said there's no fines been issued, but have there been any more enforcement undertakings other than the Taracar gutter one, where this £750,000 was paid by UU? Is there any more incidents in South Ribble over the last 12 months or since 2024 that you can mention?
Not that have led to enforcement action in terms of fines.
That's it. I reiterate that on the slide that Dolores put up, that we've got 27 investigations currently across the Northwest. So we've got a lot of cases. I'm not going to predict how many of those go through to whatever thing, whether it be an enforcement undertaking or prosecutions or whatever. But I would be surprised if a substantial number of them don't progress through, given the seriousness of some of the cases that we're looking at.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you for coming. I'll put my monitor on. Thank you for coming to talk to us this evening. My question is, how does the Environment Agency, could you give us a little bit more detail, depth, monitor river quality and discharges into South Ribble, please?
I'll maybe start with a brief on this, and Dolores can come in as well. I speak with a bit of knowledge and insight here, admittedly old, because I've been lucky enough to work on rivers and water here in Lancashire for 28 years. And the first 2 years of that was spent driving a van around the rivers of Lancashire, taking samples. And we still do that every day. We have a team of people whose job it is to drive around, take environmental quality samples from our rivers at certain strategic locations to give us a good understanding of individual stretches of the river. And we'll take those samples on varying frequencies. Some of them are fortnightly, some of them are monthly, and we take for a range of different determinants. So some of them will measure something called biological oxygen demand, so that's how much oxygen is in the water. Some of them will test for chemicals, and some of them will test for nutrients, all sorts of range of heavy metals, all sorts of different things that we're sampling for at different places and different frequencies. So there's a lot of that goes on. But the other bit that I'll probably mention is we do, excuse me, I mentioned before, we have a team that also their job is to go out and literally stand in the river and kick the bed of the river and sample and measure and count the number of insects that are living in a river. Because the more insects there are and of the broader spread of different types, the healthier your river is in simple terms. Similarly, this always amazes people, we have people whose job in part is to go and stick electricity in the river. So water and electricity doesn't normally go together, does it? But we can do it safely, and we do that to safely and temporarily stun the fish that are in the river. That enables us to catch them, count them safely and put them back in the river. That's another measure of health. I don't know whether you want to say something, Dolores, about our role in relation to operator self-monitoring and how we check that from our teams.
Yeah, and also I was going to add that we look at the spill map, the live spill map that United Utilities publish on their website on a regular basis on a dry day, and if there are spills happening, then that might lead to an investigation. I'll send somebody out from my team to go and look at why is this spill showing on this map on this particular day. That's the live data. We also have the data that United Utilities submit via their monitoring as well. And we use that as intelligence for our inspections. What Andy was describing, so United Utilities take samples and they have a team of people who sample the outfalls who are independent to the people that run the sewage works. But we have a role in monitoring whether that is being done independently. So we do an annual audit of that process, but we also send people out with the United Utilities staff and follow them around doing their sampling. And that's called an OSM audit. And we can take our own samples as well to verify the results that United Utilities have found from their samples.
So when you're talking about you're taking samples, you're recording the information, you're making comparisons with different sites.
Yeah.
So this information, is it freely available to the public? And if it is, where can we find it, please?
Yes, it is. So we have a basic open data approach within the Environment Agency, and we provide a lot of that data online on various platforms and portals, and we can give that information and share it after the meeting. But also it's all fully available as well if there's some particular data that isn't there on that platform. If it's requested, we can happily provide it and routinely do. As you can imagine, at the moment, that's probably one of our biggest growth areas, is the provision of information to members of the public who are interested, which is a sort of barometer really for how the world has shifted in my 28 years, because for probably 20 years there wasn't much interest in water. And it's amazing now how that's transformed from my perspective, because although it can be tricky at times, it's also a huge force for good. And so definitely welcome people's interest and passion in that and their interest in water at the moment.
Yeah. We'd appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on from Dolores' comments, how much does the Environment Agency rely on the data from United Utilities, and how do you make sure it is robust and accurate?
We do rely on it to some degree, but not entirely. So we do our own sampling, as Dolores has described, and we do in-depth targeted auditing and review of things. But also, and that auditing and how we do it is also benchmarked across other companies. So our specialist lead regulators will come together with their counterparts that are doing the same work for all the other water companies. And so we'll talk about the things that they are finding, and they'll look at that and go, okay, that's a bit weird because we don't get that here. Why are you getting that? So there's quite a lot of that goes on in the background, which is important. But I'll maybe just finish by highlighting that. So back just slightly earlier in the year, the government published a water white paper, which is their indication of reform to the water legislation and organisational arrangements around water regulation. And in that is a commitment to make some changes in relation to this operator self-monitoring arrangement, to move to to what they describe as an open data approach. Now, I'm sitting here as a little small cog in the wheel and distant from Whitehall. I can't tell you that I know what that means in detail, but I suspect we can be pretty confident that the approach that is currently taken in terms of operator self-monitoring is likely to undertake some pretty radical changes in the years ahead. And I suspect that will mean that we're likely to be much more actively involved in and around that than we have been since 2015-ish, about 2012 roughly, when that was brought in by Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Just from your own monitoring, what impact does the sewage outfall have on the ecology of our water systems? And I'm going to sort of suggest also, and you can correct me, whether there's a difference between treated sewage and untreated sewage, and whether that has separate impacts or combined impacts or the same. Thank you.
So the sewage contains ammonia, solids, strips out the oxygen available to insects and fish that live in water. When it's treated, those elements are reduced vastly. So the United Utilities will have a permit condition which tells them how much ammonia they can discharge into the watercourse once the sewage is treated. So there is a big difference between treated sewage and untreated sewage.
I guess the other bit, of course, that we shouldn't forget is that that impact can also be from chemicals as well. So those can be things that start to build up into nature that's living in as well. So that's another element that we're looking at. So it's not always the visible things that we're concerned about as well.
I mean, just on that, obviously, things ingest things and then they get ingested themselves by other animals. So do you monitor that chain, like the food chain, from sort of like the smallest grub to the biggest mammal sort of thing? Because I mean, I can imagine if your diet is frogs, for instance, that will have a cumulative impact if you keep consuming something that has a trace element in it or something like that.
That's not something we routinely do as part of our compliance work, but it can be something that can happen as part of work that we or others might do when you're taking a bit of a longer look and stepping back and going, okay, what's the state of things, how are things looking, where are we going? So that sort of more reflective, investigatory sort of space, it can it can come into there, as opposed to it's not normally something we would do as part of compliance, but it could also feature potentially as part of an incident investigation. If we've responded to an emergency incident and it's had particular impacts, that might be something that we would look at in there as well, actually.
Sorry, how concerned is the Environment Agency with the level of sewage discharge and water quality of rivers in South Ribble? I'm just looking on the sewagemap.co.uk site now. Sorry, it's just loading up. And over the last 24 hours, there's been an 11-hour sewage discharge into the River Ribble from Pendleton Brook. Is that a regular occurrence? Is that something that you'd see as normal? What sort of impact is that having on the river? Thank you.
So the company might want to comment specifically on that 11-hour thing. Discharges of that sort can be normal in a sense of what we might expect in certain weather conditions when you get heavy rain, etc. And that's what those discharges are designed for, to reduce the risk of systems backing up and flooding into our homes. Because I used to work for us in our flood risk area of work, and I would say that all sources of flooding are horrible, but the one that always struck me as being possibly the hardest to handle would be having sewage flood into your home. So it's an important function that it provides in that sense. I guess your broader point, though, we are concerned. So the status of our rivers is not good enough. It has improved actually a considerable amount in the 28 years I've been around. You know, there are rivers here that were dead and have come back from the dead and thriving wildlife that weren't previously. Are they good enough? Are they where they need to be? No, 100%. So those maps and figures that Dolores talked about, we all in society and the places here in Lancashire and beyond need to lean in and help give those rivers and wildlife a chance to further improve, for sure. And from the water companies specifically, I think, as I said before, there is still a lot more for them to do in terms of securing consistent compliance across the board, reducing the number of spills very significantly and reducing the number of incidents very significantly.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at unpermitted spills and specifically at Havelock Road in Bamber Bridge, I noticed that there's further investigations into this. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, and also when we may expect to hear more about how that investigation is progressing and whether it's a serious breach or not? I'd like to know a little bit more about that, please.
So my team will look at the data that United Utilities have provided and do some further analysis on that to be sure that it's accurate. And we'll carry out an inspection of the CSO and check it's working as it should be, and find out the reasons for the spills that we can see, if there are any that we think are happening on dry days when they shouldn't. And then we'll produce an inspection report that we'll send to United Utilities with possible actions. That is public information that can be accessed via the gov.uk website. We could also commit to sending it through to you, the results of that investigation.
Thank you very much. Also looking at, again, another local issue, the Tara car gutter. United Utilities paid £750,000 to organisations. Do we have any data on the outcome of this investment? Has anything changed because of that investment? Or what can we expect to see that may change, please?
I think it's too soon for us to be able to give that demonstration, because those monies have only recently been transferred through to the organisations that are mentioned. Again, I guess it's something we can provide further down the line.
Just to reassure you that we do some assurance around these things to ensure that they have been delivered and that they are going to deliver the outcomes that we're committed to. So if we find that there's something awry there, then we will be going back and ensuring that it's completed, or if not, then other further action will be taken in relation to it.
The actions are around inspecting and providing advice to agriculture in the area, which can impact on the health of the watercourse, and also further monitoring of the watercourse to find out if there's other inputs. And also some money is going to an organisation that's looking into the impact of drainage off the A59 into the watercourse as well from transport runoff. So they're the kind of details.
It's really good to hear that the Special Measures Act has come into force in 2025. Is there anything that you feel is missing from this act that you feel that you would need in order to carry out your responsibilities? Thank you.
That's a question I would love to answer, but I don't think I can, unfortunately. It would be inappropriate for me to comment and lobby for government policy and legislation. Our job as public servants is to deliver the law that is endorsed and put on the statute by Parliament, and so I appreciate the question. I would like to answer it, but I don't think we can, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Following on from Councillor Pritchard's question on the enforcement undertaking and the £750,000, can you expand on what the breach was, or is that something you can't share with us today?
I think we probably can say a little bit about it now that the case is concluded and that those arrangements have been in place. Again, United Utilities might want to add a bit more on this, but in essence it was about some infrastructure there that was being overwhelmed, is my recollection, at certain times, and we were getting discharges from the network into the drainage system in and around that area that was causing damage and harm. So, but as I say, United Utilities might like to say more.
Thank you. Councillor Stringfellow.
Thanks, Chair. You've just answered my first questions about the Tara car gutter, but that's okay. But the Chair mentioned earlier on when he was speaking about the Channel 4 programme Dirty Business, which you must have heard an awful lot about recently. Is there anything that the Environment Agency can learn from this programme, in particular in regulating water companies, and particularly for improving the water quality in South Ribble? And it does seem a shame that it's taken it to come to a television programme like that for people to start questioning this in such a strong way, I think.
Yeah, I think there's always things we can learn and reflect on. I'm not going to lie, it's a difficult watch in all sorts of senses, both as a parent of children. It was difficult to watch, but also as somebody that is worked for the Environment Agency, as I say, for 28 years, and I see every day in and out that our people are committed to and trying to deliver the absolute best they can for the places, because they live here in Lancashire, and this place matters to them. So it's difficult to see some of that stuff. I think what I would say is, the programme, many parts of it was based on things that happened quite a long time ago, and that's not to dismiss them, but it was, and I would argue that we are in a fundamentally different place today. So we've got a hugely increased workforce, thanks to the new powers and resources that government and parliament have given us in recent years. And Dolores mentioned before the 10,000 inspections that we're doing this year, and we'll likely increase that further next year. Locally, that being heading towards 1,400 or so here locally. So we're doing a huge amount more than we've ever done before. And I think the questions for us are as much about ensuring that what we do it to the absolute best quality we can, and we ensure that the work that we do is having the impact that it needs to have in terms of protecting and improving the environment through proactive action from the company, better compliance performance, spill reduction and incidents. And I think us being relentlessly focused on achieving that is probably one of the things I take from that, well, not just from that programme actually, but from the expanded interest from the public in the last 3 years or more, really. And I guess, I just sort of finished by saying, I think a little bit to what I said before, that the passion and interest that the public now has in water is an amazing thing, and we really welcome it, and we welcome the challenge for us to keep being better, because we know we'll never be perfect, but we're striving to be as good as we possibly can. So always welcome people's feedback in how we can be better.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's very encouraging to hear.
Can I bring in Councillor Martin, please?
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I was going to ask is about, obviously there's a website called Swimfo that helps, but that only helps with designated bathing areas. So the question would be, sort of, what advice would you give to any of our residents who may want to enjoy our water systems and other water sort of types of sport and things like that?
Be safe, I think, is the first thing, because members will know that tragically there are sadly regular incidents of young people in particular coming to harm in water in Lancashire. We have children, young people that have died in quarries, in rivers. So people I would encourage people to think about theirs and other people's safety, and those, of course, that might be involved in having to rescue them if they come to harm. And so, you know, if you go into think about wild swimming, shall we say, in other locations, then think carefully about whether it's safe or not and what infrastructure there is or isn't there to help you or others that might be partaking in that. I would encourage people to, you know, Dolores has said there are various places where people can get some indicative information about water quality for us. It isn't live, so, you know, some caution is needed to be there. And I would then say to people, you know, trust your instinct. If you look at it and there might be, it might not look entirely comfortable when you look at it, then I'd say probably choose to come back a different day. And generally, you know, if it's rained in the last 24 to 48 hours, then I'd say probably isn't great to do it, because whether it be sewage or whether it be some wash off farmers' fields or other things, you're more likely to have those things in the days after that rainfall than if it's been a dry period. So those are just some of the things I would say to people. But I go back to what I was saying at the very beginning about be safe.
Thanks. I mean, obviously, they're things that we can see or hope to see or at least perceive. Some of the things that are in water we can't see, and sort of if you sort of quickly look at, I'm just thinking of like bacteria, virus, protozoa, and they can have quite longevity in certain types of water, which is why I asked about the treated sewage and untreated sewage, because some can last a bit longer in treated sewage than they can. So I just wondered what would be any advice around sort of avoiding any types of water we should avoid, or obviously not swimming next to sewer outlets, but I mean it'd be a bit iffy that. But I just wondered if there's any indicative signs. I mean, obviously you get foaming and things like that in certain areas, but I just wonder if there is a way of sort of seeing if there is a better area to swim or not to swim.
Yeah, I guess this is where it can get quite complicated and tricky for all of us. So foaming, as an example, it can be perfectly natural and normal. You can get foaming from turbulence. You can get foaming from the breakdown of leaves creating a chemical reaction in the water that creates foam. So it can be perfectly natural and harmless. But it could also be the sign of something else. So it's quite a complicated thing for people to understand, whether you're sort of immersed in it on a day-to-day basis like us, or somebody that's a member of the public that's not. So it is quite tricky for sure for people. And you are right to reference about bacteria, that it is quite different. So bacteria that is in the sea with salt water will generally have a far less residual life to it than bacteria in a river that doesn't have that salt water nature to it. So again, I think I'd say to people to sort of trust their gut and their judgment, as well as seeking out the best information they can from us and others about the quality of the water in wherever they're thinking of entering or doing other activities. And also perhaps, you know, there are increasing groups that partake in these sort of activities together and hear what other people do and learn from their experiences, because I was recently talking with some people that swim in some of the lakes in Cumbria, and they're pretty clear. They know when they don't go and when they do go, and if a new member comes and joins their club or informal group, they share and pass on that information to help other people. So perhaps look out for groups that do that same sort of thing in some of those places and find out what their advice is from their experience.
Councillor Jackson.
Hi, my question again is, how effectively does United Utilities engage and work with you, the Environment Agency? And are there ways in which this engagement could improve?
Overall, I would say that United Utilities engage with us professionally and appropriately and effectively. As I've said before, does that mean that they don't need to improve on compliance, spill reduction, reducing incidents? No, that does not. They do need to improve on all those things, but they do engage with us professionally, appropriately and effectively, and quite often proactively. So if there is an issue that they are seeing, anticipating they're in danger of happening because they've seen this, then they are having those conversations with us often in advance to help us understand something and then give appropriate advice, etc., to them to ensure that they deal with it appropriately. I guess my challenge to them is to be increasingly focused, as I said before, about that proactive asset maintenance and health of their assets and how they do that. I guess the final thing I'd say, I was at an event recently where their chief executive spoke, and I felt it was important that I heard her say explicitly, regulation provides a valuable and important function for society. Regulators should be respected for the important job they do for the nation, and that compliance is her default expectation. Now, I'm not naive enough to say that the words from a chief automatically mean everything else is perfect and fine. I'm not suggesting that. Nonetheless, I felt it was an important message to hear from the leader of the organisation as a whole, that that's how she saw and feels about regulation, regulators and compliance.
So, when you're engaging, do you engage in meetings on a regular basis? Yeah?
So there's lots of different ways that we engage with them. So it can be on a site basis, so individual officers from Dolores' team talking to an individual site, and the operators on a site who are managing and operating a particular site, whether it be Leyland Sewage Works, for example. You know, we have that regular dialogue ongoing, whether it be in relation to an inspection we have done or are doing, or other issues that come up as through the natural course of things. We regularly also meet with the United Utilities team that oversee delivery of their work at a county level here in Lancashire. And I also, on a very frequent basis, am also engaging with the senior leadership team and others for the company as a whole, so chief executive, directors, others that oversee their operations as a whole. So that there's a lot of engagement that happens, but it is always done in a very... We try to be respectful and professionally and effective with each other, but also very clear, we are the regulator, they are the regulated party. The fact that we have to have a lot of dealings does not mean that there is any closeness or inappropriateness in terms of that effect, that conversation and that relationship. And it gives me perhaps an opportunity to pick up on something that was suggested in that recent television programme, that the companies have influence over us because they pay us fees. So every permit that they have to pay us an annual fee for the right to have that permit. And that is that money that comes in pays for a lot of the regulatory work that we do. I would hope and expect the United Utilities colleagues can confirm they play no part in deciding where any of Dolores' team go, when they go, what they look at, etc. That is not how it works at all. And it was it feels like it's an important moment to be able to say that here in public. So thank you for letting me do so.
Just one more thing. I asked that question so that if members of the public are watching, we're transferring that information to them and giving the reassurance. Thank you.
You've talked us through how you work with United Utilities. Do you have regular contact with councils, other agencies and local communities dealing with this important issue?
Yes, we do. So we have quite a lot of conversations with local authorities, whether it be here at the county level or your officers here for South Ribble, and that can be often in a sort of blended space of, we'll be talking about water, whether it be about there too much, the quality of it. So each local area we have those sorts of conversations, but there's a partnership space under an initiative that was launched a number of years ago from government called catchment-based approach. So there is a Douglas catchment partnership, which South Ribble sits within, and we are very active members of that. So one of our members of staff spends a lot of time engaging with that, and all the members of organisations, whether it be council, the water companies, Ribble Rivers Trust or Groundwork, or a number of different organisations, community groups that play a part in wanting to protect and improve and understand the water environment. So we do a lot of that, along with all the mountain of correspondence and data requests and lots of other things that the team deal with.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that, I mean, sort of wondered what can we do as councillors and as a council to sort of forward your role and obviously which benefits our residents and beyond.
I would ask that you have an incredibly important role in the planning function, and I don't claim to be a planning specialist, but I would, the more conversations there are at the planning stage, particularly at the strategic local plan stage, to ensure that the plans of the place as a whole and strategic developments that come forward that are future-proof for water, the better, and the environment, in terms of giving space for water for the flood risk that we're all seeing increasing because of climate change and urban development and population. But it also gives space for water in terms of separating out our rainwater from our sewage, so that then there's less water going to the sewage works to be treated, less water potentially discharged through overflows. That is an incredibly important part. But also, and then as part of that, it gives space for nature to thrive in places as well. So if there are many things I could suggest to you, but for this, I think the most significant thing strategically is placing water incredibly strongly in future strategic planning of places.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Locally, we have issues of flooding underneath bridges. We have an area in the Farrington ward where we have regular flooding. And we understand that when the local ward councillors get in touch with the relevant agencies, they're very often told that it's actually the responsibility of the railways. Obviously, they built the bridge, they've lowered the road, etc. Can you tell us a little bit about any partnership working that you have with the railways, please?
Yes, so we do work with the railways in general, but also on specific schemes. So I mentioned before the Preston South Ribble scheme. We've had to work really closely with them there for the flood defences tying into the West Coast Mainline Bridge, as an example. So we do have regular interactions with them in a number of different senses. There is a website that we have supported locally here from its inception and is now stolen by other people around the country. It's something called the Flood Hub. Ourselves and others have funded that as a platform to provide support and information to residents here in the Northwest and businesses and others to understand their flood risk and all sorts of issues related to that and who's responsible for what, because it's admittedly an incredibly complicated division of responsibilities in the world of flooding. So again, if members aren't aware of that, we'd be very happy to share information, where to find that, so that you and your constituents can use it and benefit from it.
We've asked so many questions this evening and we've learnt such a lot, and thank you very much. Is there anything that you'd like to add that we may not have covered that you feel would be beneficial for us to know?
I think we're done. I think we've covered it. Thank you very much.
Just one last question, please. The River Lostock flows through Earnshaw Bridge, my ward, and there's often incidents of pollution. You just talked about the Flood Hub, so I'd like to pass on that information to my residents. So would you be passing on the information and then I can do the same?
100% we will.
Thank you very much.
We may at the same time also add a link to, we've created nationally something called the Water Hub as well, which has a lot of information about our activities, generally about water quality and other things as well, so we can provide perhaps that link at the same time.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members on committee? No. Is there any questions from members not on committee? Councillor Pillinger first, please.
Councillor Peter Pillinger from Buckshire-on-Worden ward, and I chair one of the other scrutiny committees in the council, and I'm on planning. A comment: you give us a figure of 1,413 inspections. That's virtually meaningless without knowing how many places there are to inspect, what percentage of places are inspected. I'm not asking for those figures. I'm just saying the context is important and there is a missing dimension here. So perhaps when you are giving information in the future, you could enlarge what you're giving a little bit so that there's some context.
Thank you. I'll take that. That's good feedback for us to think about. What I would say in context is it's probably about a tenfold increase, if not more, in the numbers that we would have historically done in a year. So if that helps,
the other thing that could be put in is whether it's going up or down.
It's a very substantial uplift.
First question is, I'm looking at the WFD status map. I notice the tidal river Ribble is in red, which is it's poor. Is it? Or bad, sorry. What does that mean to the person walking their dog down the riverside in that area? And this is 2022 figures, so has it improved?
We have to do legally we're required to do our assessment of that quality on a set time period, and we're in that period where we are updating that at this time actually. So there'll be some updated classifications issued in the not too distant future. But our classifications for what we call good ecological status are built on quite a number of different premises. So some of it is about the quality of the water, some of it is about the wildlife that is found in the water, some of it could be about the structural shape of the river, whether how natural or not, or how changed it is. So it's quite a complicated thing. So an individual example of that thing could come from a single thing or quite a number of combinations of those things. So again, if the committee would like, we'd happily provide you
I'm
with
just
them
wondering
all.
why the Ribble is bad.
And it will probably potentially be a number of different things because it's it is at the bottom of the catchment. So everything that we all as a society throw at it ends up there. So it likely, off the top of my head, there will be some quality elements, but it will also be potentially some of the historic elements in terms of that stretch of the Ribble has been historically heavily managed and maintained into quite a relatively artificial state in some parts of it as well. So some of those things could also play out into that classification.
Which might give us indications in the council about things we might do in our planning, for example. The planning question is, you mentioned actually the Douglas Catchment Organisation. I was going to ask you, if you've got a planning application in Chorley, where the surface water is going to get fed into the River Lostock, and down where I live in Moss Side, the river is often up into getting underneath the bridges or flowing over the footpaths. Do you feed in? Is there an overall plan for the River Lostock for the effect of water going in for a development upstream that might affect people living downstream?
Dolores might want to add a bit more than that, because at one point in the time Dolores led our team that gives our input into the planning process. But yes, we do have input into the planning process as a statutory consultee and also as a more informal advisor as strategic plans are being developed before they're brought to you and others. But also we have a role as a statutory consultee on individual planning applications as well. So yeah, we definitely do have a role. I don't know, Dolores, if you want to add any more.
Like Andy says, we have a feedback into the strategic plan which covers more than just the development site itself. So that takes into account the water across the whole of the river. And then when it comes to the individual site, we also give comments to the planning application from planning specialists within the Environment Agency.
Councillor Bollenberg.
Hi, my name's David. I'm the councillor for one of the two Bamber Bridge wards, and I'm actually Bamber Bridge West, which contains Havelock Road. So this was really interesting for me to read tonight and find out that there'd been another feedback on your documentation. It doesn't say what CSO is anywhere. So I was interested to find out that it's combined sewer outflow. So I realise investigations are underway. I've got a few questions, committee, I hope you bear with me. I'm just wondering if you could inform me, when did this happen?
We're using the data that United Utilities provide to us as their statutory duty. So we're just looking back on the historic information that we've got. We're not saying that there's definitely an issue going on there that's impacting the watercourse, but that's what we want to find out. The fact that there are dry day spills it highlights an issue to us, so that's why we want to look into it.
Thank you. You also mentioned that it would be you'd be concluding the undertaking the investigation next year, and I'm not quite sure what you mean by next year. Is that financial year?
Yeah. So our new inspection plan starts from April onwards. So we'd plan our inspections by quarter, so it'll be within the first quarter.
Great. So the next few months,
Yeah.
you'll have a look at Havelock Park is quite close to my heart because
Yeah.
we've got a little kids' playground there,
Okay.
right on it. Lots of people take the dogs for a walk, and I echo Pete's question about what should we tell residents. I mean, frankly, I've been telling people don't let your dogs go in the river. It's very difficult with dogs that they bound off. One of the things that struck me is when I was standing for election, one of the first questions I got from people was, what can you do about the river? It's filthy. And I've never come across a satisfactory answer to that. So one of the things that I've been doing is, and I've been told off by the council for doing it, I've been going in and pulling out shopping trolleys and armchairs and disabled walkers and things like that. And it's a filthy, horrible job. But I've never been able to find anybody in the Environment Agency who will come and clean up the river. They just basically say it's not them. Who do we turn to clean up our river?
So the legal framework around sort of obstructions and litter and physical pollution, in, shall we say, in that sort of sense, is that it is the landowner's responsibility. Whoever, sometimes it's a different landowner frustratingly on each side of a river, or sometimes you're lucky and it's the same landowner, but fundamentally, firstly, it is the responsibility of the landowner to clear it. If it's what is legally defined as main river, and our flood risk specialists deem that the object is raising flood risk in a way that is unacceptable and intolerable, then we will go in under our powers and proactively remove items. But the bar for that is quite high, if I'm honest. So generally, whether it be a shopping trolley, that sort of stuff, is not something we're going to come and remove from a flood risk perspective, and it's not something that we would that we're legally able to do from a pollution perspective either. So it is pretty much for the landowner to take responsibility to clean up. Now that there are others, organisations, I mentioned the Ribble Rivers Trust before, they and others secure funding and resources to deliver proactive cleanups for rivers, and often engage with community groups and others to be involved in and part of that. I know, for example, on the River Tord down in Skelmersdale, there's an amazing group down there in the park that do fantastic work both about this issue but other issues as well in terms of monitoring and all sorts of other interesting things. So that might be something that people that in that place might want to follow up, and we'd be happy to facilitate that.
Apologies. That would be good if you could put the committee and therefore me in touch with these river cleanup groups and monitoring groups. It would be good to see if we could set something like that up in Bamber Bridge, and I know I've got residents who would be interested in doing that. Which leads me on to my last question: is what is it you want people to be doing to alert you to potential problems? What should they do? What can I tell my residents to do?
And my first message would be, Dolores mentioned our 24/7 incident emergency hotline. So that's 0800 80 70 60. Also now you can report incidents to us online on gov.uk. We'll provide information on that as well. So my ask is, firstly, is if somebody sees something that they're not happy with or not comfortable with, tell us. Don't ever make a judgment about, oh, I don't think it's serious enough, I won't bother them. That's our job. Let us do that. You give us the information and let us apply our expertise and judgment to it, and then we'll follow it up, and we'll always commit to come back to you about what we find and what we or others are going to do about it. So I think that would be a really big ask that I'd ask for people. One of the other ones, as something just a bit different, is we have quite a lot of problems for what we call contaminated surface water discharges. So this will be a small pipe that comes from a property and discharging straight into the river, as opposed to something connected to the sewer. It might be it's set up that it was for the roof drainage from a particular building, and then we've come along and gone, tell you what, we're really sick of having only one bathroom in our family. Let's have another bathroom downstairs. Okay, yeah, builder comes in, does it. The easiest path to deliver it is to connect the waste from that bathroom into that pipework, which then goes into the river, rather than finding where the sewer is, connecting it, etc. So if people are going to have extensions or other home works done on their house, always check and make sure that that drainage is going to the right place, because if it's going into the non-sewer pipe, it's likely to be going straight into the river.
Can I just ask again if there's any councillors on Teams who've got any questions? No, thank you. Alderman Forrest.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me compliment you. You presented a much improved picture than the one we saw in It's a Dirty Business. Really, the environmental officers shown in that were an absolute, I nearly swore then, disgrace. But you have presented an excellent picture of what the Environment Agency is doing now. My question really relates to my long involvement with Curedon Valley Park and of course the River Lostock there. I've walked there since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. In fact, in 2014 I was even closer when I reached for a ball and found myself head over heels in the River Lostock, fully clothed. At that time, in 2014, I wasn't really worried about the river quality. Now I look at this and I see, you know, you can't give me the figures for 25, 26, but in 24 we had 447 discharges into the Lostock, and in fact it was worse in 24 than in 23. And the Curedon Valley Park, we have this area where there's a bridge, picnic area, all the rest of it. If you go there in the summer, you'll find hordes of little kids messing about in the water. Ford. At the ford, yeah. Having seen this, having seen It's a Dirty Business and seeing that and what you've said about looking at the river, do you think we should actually be doing something to give people some advice, particularly when, you know, as to whether their kids should get into the water and or whether we should, I don't know really what to do about it, but it is a matter of concern to me now when I see little ones in the water. And I think of that poor girl in the play, for example. Is there any steps, do you think, or Curedon Valley Park? I mean, I'm a friend of Curedon Valley Park. Is there anything do you think we should do to try and avoid another horrible incident?
I think, firstly, I'll start with saying we aren't public health professionals, and it's not formally our job to give public health advice. So I just put that there as a starting, but not to I'll still try to best to help you with the question, but just to register that. There are things that potentially could be done in terms of public information on site to help people in terms of both the safety point that I made before, but also perhaps about good hygiene as well. So being in a water environment will also always have risks. It might not be bacteria in the sense for E. coli perhaps in some cases, but it might be something called Wheels disease, which is a disease that rats carry naturally. And so we will say to our staff, if you've been in the river doing something, make sure you wipe your hands down, etc., before you touch yourself or eat something. So those sorts of things, I think they're probably the sorts of things I'll be thinking about, because you know, if people are thinking about, stick to, well, if it doesn't look right, I'm not going to go in. If it's not safe, I'm not going to go in. Has it rained in the last couple of days? I'm not going to go in. I think if you're thinking of those sorts of things, you're not going to go too far wrong.
Do you think we should be putting up signs and things?
It's clearly the choice of the individual organisations that own land or whatever, but from my perspective, the more public information there is about the quality of our environment, to help them make judgment calls, the better, and also what they can do to help improve and protect that, so then the better. So personally, if the more opportunities there are to give better information to public, then that always has my support.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to Dolores and Andy for your time this evening. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting or make your way home to enjoy the rest of the nice weather if it's still nice out there. I'm proposing a short 5-minute comfort break just to give Andy and Dolores the time to leave and Ian and his colleague time to come in. And would you be able to send any documents, anything that you've said you'd try and send over to us to Ben, and we can then circulate it to the committee and councillors. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that, everybody. I'm happy to invite Ian Pilling, Area Engagement Lead for Lancashire, and Simon Holding, County Business Lead for Wastewater and United Utilities. Please could you introduce yourselves, give us a brief overview of the organisation and make some introduction remarks on the issue. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening everyone. So I'm Simon Holding, County Business Lead for Lancashire for Wastewater. So my responsibility is all things wastewater in Lancashire, right up to the River Lune above Lancaster and down towards Wigan as well. I've done many a job in United Utilities, right from operating wastewater treatment works to leading our environmental teams and more recently all of our wastewater operations in Lancashire. I'm born and raised in Lancashire. These are the rivers that I play in with my kids. These are the seas I swim. So I have a vested interest in making sure that we're doing everything we can do to make sure the environment's the best it possibly can be as well. Just hand over to Ian.
Hi everyone, my name's Ian Pilling. I'm the engagement lead in UU for Lancashire. So my role is to be the interface with people like yourselves and the company and to be able to put you in touch with experts like Simon who can answer difficult questions, hopefully. I've been with the company a long time and I've been in this role for the last 2 years and I've learned a lot and I can see how hard Simon and the operational teams are working on a daily basis to improve our performance in this area. Nice to be here, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sending the slides over to us a few days ago, and they've all been circulated to councillors and anybody that's attending the meeting this evening. So thanks for introducing yourselves. Do United Utilities acknowledge the scale of the issue and the impact that the discharge of sewage is having on the rivers in South Ribble? How seriously are United Utilities taking the issue? Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your question. So, absolutely. So we recognise, particularly over the last couple of years since COVID times, I think we've seen a, dramatic re-engagement with the environment and the water environment, particularly. That is something that's fantastic, and it's great to see that interest. And I think particularly we recognise the strength of feeling, particularly in the northwest, but also across the UK around the impact that storm overflows, but also wider around the impacts that sewage can have in the water environment as well. And I think obviously we'll come on to the slide pack, but that'll hopefully show and share with you what we're doing not only in the northwest but here in South Ribble as well, around driving performance on kind of sewage in the area as well. So we'll just come through the slide pack. What I'll take us through is hopefully I'll take us through at pace, stop regularly for questions, or come to them at the end as well. It'd be useful to kind of answer anything else off. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview in terms of introduction to what we are, what we're responsible for, also what is coming and what is happening around investment, particularly into the area as well. Talk a little bit around flooding. I think as you heard the Environment Agency discuss earlier, we not only have challenges around quantity, but it's also quality as well, and that can result in flooding as well. So talk a little bit around that, but also explain a little bit around what we're doing, not only as United Utilities, but with partners in the area as well to kind of improve matters. So just sort of moving on, I think water cycle, this is a sort of a cut down element of it, but we safely collect rainwater, store that in reservoirs to our water treatment works before we then distribute it to the water network. That is the drinking water that is then provided to people's homes. We then collect that water and wastewater from those businesses, transport it to treatment works, and then treat it and safely return it to the environment as well. We also support thousands of businesses across the region, which are absolutely critical in terms of the economy and particularly locally as well. So that is broadly our sort of responsibilities. Just to cover off some of the key challenges that we have, so I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. Significant growth in the northwest. It's a real challenge in terms of a million people expected growth in population over the next 25 years. Significant pressure on infrastructure, and due to the unique nature of the way that our systems were heavily advanced within the Victorian era, our towns and cities and populations have grown up around systems and towns and villages that are already in place. And unfortunately, that is probably one of the reasons that we have the challenges that we do around storm overflows, and I'll touch upon that shortly. Climate change is also a really significant impact, so we are seeing drier summers, but we're also seeing really heavy and intense rainfalls as well. I've recognised that since I was younger, and the summers that I used to enjoy, probably not always the same as they are now with those kind of rainfall periods as well. Huge diverse communities across the northwest, so very, very different customs and practices, and that customer base that we serve is wide and varied, and how we all treat the water environment equally is obviously something that's really important to us, and one of the challenges that we need to look at as well. I think, as the Environment Agency mentioned earlier as well, we have seen some really significant improvement in the northwest, particularly the waterways in the northwest over the last kind of 30 years. I've got a fantastic picture in my office, which is my mum and my granddad that are in his full Sunday dress on the beach at Blackpool many, many years ago. But that was also, knowing what I know now, that was also a time and a period where up until 1995, sewage was just discharged with very little treatment twice a day at high tide. So we have, in many ways, come a long, long way, but there is still so much more to do. What are we doing in terms of Lancashire to kind of address this and these challenges? We're massively supporting what we're doing around customers who are struggling to pay their bills, so we're doubling our support funds for that. Particularly as well, I touched on this in a bit more detail, 91 storm overflows, so combined storm overflows, CSOs, as you've heard earlier. We are targeting around about £500 million of investment, £500 million of investment to reduce the operation of those storm overflows as well. We're also looking at one of the challenges around climate change, but also the nature that many of our systems in Lancashire are what's known as combined systems. So they take foul water from people's homes and businesses, and also rainfall as well. And typically across the northwest on a dry day, our sewers are no more than about 16% full. But those changes in rainfall, that is what then leads to storm overflows operating as really a hydraulic relief point to prevent homes and businesses flooding. So they do perform a really important function, however, obviously recognise the environmental impact that they have as well. Additionally to that, we've also fortunate that running right through the sort of county of Lancashire is we have some aqueducts that run right from the Lake District down into Manchester that provide the main source of drinking water as well. And over the next couple of years, we've got a £3 billion investment programme to secure those supplies and make sure that they're safe for future generations as well. The broader context around the northwest in terms of our plan, so the numbers over the next 5 years, £13.5 billion. That is the largest investment programme for over 100 years into the northwest. It is a fantastic legacy that I'm really proud to be part of in terms of what we're delivering as well. What that means for the environmental programme is 7 times bigger than what we've delivered previously as well. 30,000 new jobs we are supporting through that investment as well. And my team size is also increasing from around about 250 of my colleagues that work in my Lancashire team up to around 300 in the next couple of months as well. So significant investment, not only assets, but people as well to operate and maintain those works as well. What that investment will also deliver is across the region a 60% reduction in storm overflows. I'll touch on a little bit later around some of the not yet fully verified data, but I thought it was important to share that is that what we've submitted to the Environment Agency. That investment will also improve around about 500 kilometres of watercourse across the region as well. So just in terms of flooding, before I come back to storm overflows, I think it's really important, as I've mentioned, we've got a mixture of foul water and in many cases, as we touched on planning earlier, probably one of the questions that hopefully comes up later is around what can we do to protect waterways. So we're huge advocates for having separate systems, so perfectly clean water that falls from the sky, when it falls onto kind of homes and businesses, getting that out of the foul system is really key, and that's critical to reducing storm overflows as well. So that is something that we massively advocate, and Ian later on will talk about what we're doing around sustainable urban drainage systems and rainwater management as well. We also have a number of surface water sewers, so they are around safely conveying surface water in those separate systems to the water environment. We do have challenges, and particularly in Lancashire as well. around contaminated surface waters where there are misconnections. We're about to launch a huge misconnection programme where we'll be, with a dedicated team in Lancashire, investigating some more of those and trying to essentially help to get those issues rectified, recognising that not all customers can afford to change the drainage where that is a problem as well. And I've touched on combined sewer overflows, but again, we absolutely recognise that it is a significant problem for the sector, but what we're doing through our investment programme is driving that investment to reduce the operation of storm overflows. And that is a programme that we've not only started now, here and now, and you'll see some pictures of not far from here what we're actually delivering, but also that runs right up to 2050 as well as an investment programme. I think Andy touched on this earlier, just around the flood hub. So we recognise that flooding is a really complex issue. Lots of sources of water can be in the water environment when flooding does occur, and the roles and responsibilities can be particularly blurred. So we just wanted to include a bit of a reminder around particularly riparian owners and culverted watercourses and local watercourses and the impact that can then have on flooding. In some cases, and quite locally to here as well, those impacts can then actually flood into the sewer system and cause that to overflow as well. And again, obviously not great at all when that does happen. Highway gullies and drains as well, another particular impact in terms of making sure that they're cleaned on a regular basis. They have the capacity and they are able to take any pollutants off the roads prior to going into the environment or into our sewer system as well. So I thought quite useful just to kind of share what some of those roles and responsibilities are around flooding as well. So what are some of the challenges, particularly around kind of the northwest and particularly here in Lancashire? So in the northwest, we receive typically around about 40% more urban rainfall than the industry average. So I think that's proof that it generally does rain a bit more in the northwest. And when you add that combined with the fact that actually we have one of the highest proportion in the industry of combined sewers, generally due to the age and the developments occurred in our towns, it represents a real specific issue that we do have here in Lancashire and the northwest. What we're doing as well to make sure that we're managing that the network that transfers all of the wastewater from people's homes and businesses to the treatment works to the environment is not only kind of hard infrastructure investment, so actually building new storm storage tanks or additional treatment capacity. One of the factors that does impact us is how sewers can be misused. So we have a pretty simple but graphic saying around only pee, poo and paper down the drains. Unfortunately, we have everything that comes into there, particularly fats, oils, greases, wet wipes, and what that can cause is blockages in the network, which can lead to unpermitted pollution incidents as well. So we're really trying to promote good customer behaviours around what to put into the sewer system as well. But to try and detect when those things are happening, we're investing around about £100 million in sensors across our system. So alarms that alert to something being at an abnormal level in the system when something's potentially not rainfall, there's no rainfall occurring. And then we can send one of our vehicles out, which operates 24/7, to go and proactively identify what is happening and try and prevent an environmental issue from happening as well. That is also supplemented with artificial intelligence as well. So really cutting edge technology that is here, living and breathing in Lancashire, to try and prevent those issues happening and protect the environment as well. So we also, on top of that as well, particularly within my team, we have a really strong culture around root cause. So it's not good enough for me that something's happened once. How do you stop that from ever happening again? And then how do you learn more widely across the assets? So where else might we have that risk and what else can we do as well? And that's really driven by my team out on the ground every day as well. So just in terms of river water quality, just a couple of sort of final slides before I hand over to Ian. I've mentioned some of these slides, so what's happening here before, but in rainfall, storm overflows act as a really important hydraulic relief point in those systems to prevent homes and businesses flooding, and that's essentially why they are permitted to operate in a certain way. But we recognise that the way that those assets operate has changed and what we need to do to deliver that. So alongside our investment, which we spoke around earlier, but also some of the targets around reducing the operation of storm overflows to generally no more than 10 by 2050 is a really stretching and ambitious target as well. On one of the Environment Agency slides that you saw earlier, that was actually an inspection that was occurring locally in this area. Some of these assets are in the middle of roads, right next to railways, other critical infrastructure. So the complexity of the engineering work that is ongoing to deliver those solutions is really, really significant. And we've got industry experts, global experts working on those solutions here in Lancashire as well. So what does it mean in terms of numbers and the programme? There's a small map there, but a lot of this information is available on our website, and I'll make sure that Ian passes on all of the details of where you can find all of this after. But around about 91 projects right across Lancashire. We're delivering close to £500 million of investment around reducing storm overflows over the next 5 years as well. And as you can see there, it is a fantastic branch diagram of the interconnected nature of all of the watercourses in the northwest. And a lot of that does then flow to the Ribble and to the Fylde coast as well. And that's something as well that's really important for us around recognising bathing water quality and what we can do as part of partnerships to improve that, particularly around the Fylde coast as well. So just in terms of some of the numbers, I think you've had a supplementary handout that's been handed to yourselves as well. So just wanted to touch really in terms of the numbers. So I was very fortunate to come back into Lancashire in the past sort of 9 months. And I wanted to share some of the facts and figures with you. These are the numbers that we've shared with the Environment Agency, so they're not yet fully published on our website or the Environment Agency's website, still subject to a level of verification. But just to share that since sort of 2023, the number of storm overflow operations or number of spills has reduced from 1466 to 941. So that's a 36% reduction in those first couple of years. Of more significance as well is the operation of those storm overflows, the number of hours as well. That has reduced by around about 52%. So from 7,000 to just over 3,000 hours as well. So really, really significant improvements with the really targeted investment that we've done so far as well. All of that data is heading in the right direction. We recognise as well that last year was also a tale of two halves. So very, very dry kind of start to the year, but actually a kind of very wet to end of the year. So probably on average a typical year. To deliver those improvements, as I've mentioned, targeted investment that we've made in particular areas. We've also done a lot around the monitoring of the data is driven by sensors, so very similar to those of you that have alarms on your houses, very similar to those that detect movement. Really sensitive, they can be in quite acrid environments, and things such as spider webs and various other things can impact it as well. So we've done a lot of work on making sure the data is accurate as it possibly can be, recognising that that's what people want to see. It is published live on the website as well, and on numerous others that are using that data, so it is open data as well. What we've also been looking at is where we can do some targeted improvements in maintenance, so additional sewer cleaning to make sure we've got full capacity, where sewers have been impacted by additional silts from road runoff or various other things as well. And locally to here as well, we cleaned around about 4.5 kilometres of sewer as well over the last 12 months. So again, significant ongoing investment in that as well. We're really pleased in terms of the way that the numbers are trending, but we recognise actually we've got so much more to do and where we want to get this to make sure that the environment is safe for everybody in the northwest. And particularly here in South Ribble, 4 key schemes that are actually due to start on site, so that is when they'll start physically being built. It's due by the end of the year, approximately around about £15 million. The top project you can see there at Gregson Lane, that is around going to be a storage tank, which essentially will, when the rainwater comes through, it's mixed with the wastewater, that will store that water, prevent that spill, and then return it into the treatment works once the flows have subsided. But we will also talk around in a section shortly around what we're doing on that. So again, really encouraging, but we've got a lot to do and we are on with it. You can see here's just some examples. So 2 of our schemes in Chorley, down at Southland Secondary School. This is the size and scale of some of the projects that you will see that will be happening and popping up again. As part of our approach to this, we do lots of engagement with local schools, local residents, and again, if anybody would like to see any of these projects at any time, by all means, please just let us know. I'm more than happy to take you to any of them or any of our sites as well. Again, another example in Blackburn, 12,500 cubic metres of storage this tank will be. So round about sort of 5 Olympic swimming pools, if I've got my maths correct. And that'll be completing in the next year as well. And then just a final example over in Kirkham, so a slightly different solution where we're actually tunnelling at a great depth down a road. So again, the residents won't necessarily notice any difference in this area, but a large sewer will be built that will capture that flow and again prevent storm overflows at South Station Road. So just some examples of what we've been on with in the last couple of years as well. And just the sort of, I guess, final slide for me is what we recognise is that the water environment is impacted by lots of pressures: climate change, agriculture, storm overflows, private discharges. Lots of different things can have an impact on the environment. We're absolutely keen that we play our part, not only in what we're doing with storm overflows and the improvements to treatment works, but what we can do working in partnership. So just a few examples of what we do working with the likes of Ribble Rivers Trust or the Ribble Life Catchment Partnership as well. What we've also done is through our sort of community fund, we've helped and supported around about 42 organisations which have received donations for things such as litter picking equipment or testing equipment or various other things that is to do that as well. We also about to shortly employ a team of river rangers dedicated to Lancashire. So it's something that we've trialled, recognising the challenges that I think one of the councillors mentioned earlier around when we do have impacts on either private or riparian owned watercourses, retrieving tyres or shopping trolleys or litter picks. There's not always necessarily an organisation that can help. We're employing a direct team of river rangers in Lancashire to try and help with some of that as well, recognising the impact it can have on the communities as well. And at that point, I'll hand over to Ian, who's going to take us a bit more through what we're doing on rainwater management.
Okay, thanks, Simon. So yeah, rainwater management. As part of our business plan submission to Ofwat that was approved probably 18 months ago now, a big element of that was about pitching for some money to manage rainwater better. And that's on the basis that Simon's given you a few statistics there of 40% more rainfall in the northwest, 1 million more people moving to our region in the next 25 years, 350,000 new homes into the region. We're getting less green in the northwest. We're getting more grey. That means it's more difficult for us to manage that sewer system. There's more risk in terms of water quality, in terms of overflows, and there's more risk in terms of flooding on properties. So we pitched for some money from Ofwat, and pleased to say we got £280 million. And I suppose if you were to describe how we're going to use that money, it's sustainable urban drainage on speed. We're going to really mobilise and extend the type of work we're doing in that space. It's not all about grey solutions. It's not all about building big tanks. We need to do things in a more natural way to tackle the problem. That gives you additional benefits around biodiversity and things like that as well. So it's absolutely the right thing to do. So we just wanted to give you a little flavour of the types of stuff that is going to be coming along in the next few years, and there are definitely opportunities for you guys here in South Ribble, and indeed we'd already started a couple of conversations that I'll bring to life for you in a moment. So what do we mean by sustainable urban drainage, and what types of interventions are we going to be doing? So this is all about slowing both the volume of flow into our networks, but slowing the speed in which it gets into those networks. So the types of interventions we're going to be looking at: natural flood management schemes higher up in the catchment to store that water higher up in the catchment, don't let it run off as quickly into the lower areas and into the systems. Then in terms of attenuation, when you're in your towns and your cities, slow the flow. Interventions like rainwater gardens to store that water, let it seep out of there slowly, and so it doesn't overload the system. We're going to look at opportunities for separating the sewers. So Simon's talked a lot about combined systems. You know, are there opportunities for us to take that rainwater out of that combined system completely and build a new network or find a new place to put it? Then we've got interventions such as rainwater harvesting as well. So those are lower level schemes, very often customer based. So water butts, rainwater planters, and interventions like that where we can all collectively do our bit to slow that flow. So the first big project, an element of the funding that we've got, I'm pleased to say a part of South Ribble is involved in that, and we've been having some conversations with your officers from the climate team as part of that project. So we've got £25 million for the Preston wastewater catchment scheme, and this is where we're looking to take or provide interventions from sustainable urban drainage to take out 7,000 cubic metres from the sewer system. And the reason we've chosen the Preston catchment is that when we look at our data of where do we struggle from a flooding perspective, this is quite a difficult area for us. We've had over 130 incidents of people's homes being flooded in the last 10 years. So that's why we're coming to Preston. So in the course of the last 3 months, we've been working really closely with all the local authorities whose drainage, whose sewerage goes to the Clifton Marsh treatment works near Freckleton. Okay, and if you look at the slide there with the various parties on it, you can see the respective councils, so yourselves, Ribble Valley, Preston, Fylde, Lancashire County Council, and we've also been working with the Environment Agency and the Ribble Rivers Trust. And what we've been doing is to say, where are the areas that are highly susceptible to flooding? Where are the areas that actually, when we look at climate change forecasts, they're going to struggle even more? Where are the areas in this catchment where we need to intervene and try and do something different? And the conversations we've been having with our partners are, what schemes have you guys got on the table that you're looking at already and perhaps haven't been able to fund? And can we collaborate with you to join in, give you some money, enable you to do them, and we get an added benefit as well? So for example, if you have a town centre regeneration scheme, can we get involved if it's in the right area where it's an area susceptible to flooding, and we'll put some rain gardens in, and we can make your regeneration scheme look nicer, improve biodiversity, etc., but actually we get a collective benefit from a flooding perspective as well. So we've been having these discussions for about 3 months now, and we are delighted with the openness and transparency and the collaboration we've received from yourselves and the other partners around the table in the steering group. And we're also delighted with the opportunities that potential partners have put on the table to us. So we've received about 65 opportunities so far. We're really pleased with them from a speed of delivery perspective. There's some schemes that are close to be actually first spade in the ground, and actually we can jump in quite quickly, make them a bit bigger, make them a bit better, and deliver some benefits for all of us. So the next steering group meeting's probably going to be in about 2 months' time. That's where we've got boffins in the background doing all the modelling, understanding where is the best place for the intervention, what type of intervention should it be. Is it a water butt scheme? Is it a rain garden? Is it a bioswale? Etc., etc. And we'll start to present those ideas back to the partners in a couple of months' time. And then it's all systems go. And then it is, right, let's do some stuff. Let's get some stuff changed. Let's get our urban environment greened up to collectively help all of our efforts. So that's really positive. There's a map there which shows you the catchment. So everywhere in pink is the catchment that goes to Clifton Marsh. You will see South Ribble there, and it's the Penwitham area whose sewerage goes over to Clifton Marshes. So your guys from the climate team here have been really helpful. They've been putting forward ideas and suggestions to us. They know the local community groups. They know where engagement would be good, and perhaps a water butt trial would go down really well in the local community. So we're working on those suggestions now, and in a couple of months' time, we should hopefully be able to send you an update with here are the projects that are going to happen in South Ribble. So that's really positive and going well. We just thought on the next few slides we'd give you a bit of a flavour for some of the early work that we've done in this space. So we've been using, I suppose, Greater Manchester as a bit of a test bed for this with some early intervention work. You can see some pictures there of schemes we've done in Bolton, in Oldham, in Altrincham and in Stretford. Then on the next slide you'll see some people stood next to posh water butts or planters. So we've done 2 or 3 of these trials as well in the northwest. We did one here at Hale that you can see in front of you. We did one over near Bolton, and we're actually right in the middle of a promotion at the moment. We started one in Freckleton in the Fylde local authority. We started promoting that about 10 days ago to 1,000 people, or just over 1,000 people, and within 3 days we had 200 people sign up to have a planter installed at the property. So really, really positive, good engagement, and people are sort of wanting to play their part, which is fantastic. I actually asked permission from Councillor Bollenberg. We had a Teams call yesterday, so the councillor reached out to us a few weeks ago after meeting our chief exec, I think, at an event to see if we could help. And so we had a really positive call yesterday where I think with your involvement in Bamber Bridge in Bloom, we basically got the Google map up in front of us on the screen, and we looked at Bamber Bridge and we looked at opportunities to put planters in or water butts in and green interventions. So Councillor Bollenberg is having a think, talking to friends and colleagues from the Bamber Bridge in Bloom, and we're going to have a conversation about what can we do there with some practical interventions to slow that flow in Bamber Bridge. So again, really, really positive, and thank you for letting me mention that tonight. Cool. And then finally, final element of sort of the SUDS work that we're doing, we've been doing a lot of work with schools, again, piloting that activity in Greater Manchester, and you can see some facts and figures there about the interventions and some nice pictures of the rain gardens and permeable paving and stuff like that we've put in place. I'm pleased to say that we've secured a couple of schools in South Ribble to go through this process in the short term. So in the next 2 or 3 months, a couple of schools up in Longton, which is an area that does struggle with flooding. I'm pleased to say that they'll be going through this process and some interventions taking place there. And I suppose the cherry on top of that project is, while we're there, we'll do a water audit of the actual school itself. So we'll look for the leaky taps, we'll install water efficient devices, we'll fix any leaks that are there, and we'll save people some money on the bills hopefully as well. So that's coming shortly as well. Okay. And that's it from me. So I suppose it's question time.
Thank you, Ian and Simon, for the presentation. Very much appreciated. Can I bring in Councillor Stringfellow, please?
Sewage discharges. Oh, sorry. It's on there. And protect the quality of the water. You've told us some things. I just wonder whether you could tell us a little bit more, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Appreciate that. I think so. Alongside, as I've said, what we've got particularly around water quality is mentioned there a lot around what we're doing to reduce storm overflows, particularly. So that is the 91 schemes, £490 million worth of investment that we've got that is happening in Lancashire as we speak as well. In addition to that, we've also got quite a lot of investment that also happens in improving not only the, essentially the quality of the treated effluent as well. So it was a great observation earlier in terms of the differences between storm overflows and actually the fact that, you know, when it's not raining, people are still using water and going to the toilet and showering. So that happens all the time. So we've also not only in the last sort of probably 10 years, we've also invested heavily upstream in the Ribble with investments at Blackburn and Darwin. So we've got the kind of one of the largest technical plants over at Salisbury Treatment Works, which goes into the River Darwen. We also, as was mentioned earlier, particularly around bacteria and bacteria and viruses, a number of our assets in the region, particularly Blackburn and Preston, also have ultraviolet treatment on the end of the process. So essentially sunbeds that irradiate the bacteria and stop them reproducing in the environment as well, to provide a level of disinfection as well. And that's really important for bathing waters. That isn't something that's installed as standard at all treatment works, but we do have that in the region as well. So that is a lot around our investment programme as well. There are big projects, but I'm also this year will be spending probably around about £12 million just on general asset health and maintenance improvements that we're making into our assets in Lancashire as well, and that is we're also to kind of help and further improve water quality. An additional sort of 55 staff members are joining the team in Lancashire, and we're based just up the road at Salisbury.
Thank you, that's interesting.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's really good that Councillor Bollenberg has asked that question, and your response to him is really encouraging. And it was something that I wanted to ask you for those areas of South Ribble that don't fall under the Preston wastewater catchment area. And I'm just thinking we have lots of community groups, so Lostockall and Farrington and Bloom, Leyland and Bloom, which is a really well established, and there's possibly other organisations spread through the other areas of South Ribble. Working with them and also with other community organisations, how can we help you to reach into those community groups to get this message out to them and to encourage them to take on some of the work that you're progressing? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I should have said the conversation with Councillor Bollenberg is outside of that Preston catchment scheme, because Bamber Bridge doesn't fall within that catchment. But the good news is we do have another funding stream internally where we can do some stuff. So basically, we'd like to hear from you on any opportunities. So it might be useful if I drop you a line outlining the types of stuff we want to be doing and the organisations we think we'd like to work with, for example. And if you can promote that to people you know, use me as the conduit to get it into the organisation. We can set up an introductory call like we did with Councillor Bollenberg yesterday and see whether or not a funding stream is available to do some stuff. Fundamentally, the conversation we were having yesterday was making sure that where we wanted to do the interventions in Bamber Bridge were in an area where we had a combined sewer, because that's where we get the benefit of taking that rainwater out of that system. So I can't sit here and say, yeah, we can work with anyone you want, and of course there'll be some money for us to do some stuff. We'll need to do an initial cleanse, if you like, and a check on is that the right place for us to be doing stuff, is funding available, but we'd be delighted to have those types of conversations with you.
Just a follow-up question, and I think, Elaine. I believe Lostockall, which is, I'm a ward councillor for Lostockall, as is Councillor Stringfellow. I believe we have what's called a riparian plan. I'd really like to know a little bit more about, we've tried to find out what does this mean for Lostockall. We have areas of real flooding, and actually what people think of as Lostockall actually falls into the Farrington ward. And we have like real historic areas of problematic flooding. It would be really good for us to as a community, we have a community hub, Lostockall and Farrington, to invite you or a representative from your agency to come and talk to us at the hub about that. and what we can do to better understand. So when we're talking to our residents, it's really important that we understand what that means. So I'd like to invite you to attend the hub and to, if at all possible, work with our schools in that area as well, because I think the project that you've just talked about, I think where we do have problematic flooding in areas of South Ribble other than the Preston catchment area, we should prioritise the work with schools as well. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, just to come in on that. I've 2 members of my leadership team are actually Lostock Hall residents, so they'd be delighted to come and talk to you and see what we can do there to help out.
Can I just ask, the combined sewers, do they tend to exist in sort of older terraced areas with, you know, traditionally industrial sort of areas? Because that's what Lostock Hall is a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a fantastic question, and the nature of combined sewers is that they've sort of grown over time. It was the pipe that was flowing that was the easiest to connect. One of the other challenges that we have as well is we're not a statutory consultee on planning applications, so we have a fantastic team of developer services technicians that offer advice. But we have real challenges when developers have a right to connect into the network as well, and that can represent challenges when our funding mechanisms in terms of customer bills and our regulatory regime is on a 5-year cycle, and obviously, as you all appreciate, developments can move a lot faster than that as well, so it can really represent some challenges. But generally, yeah, up to a certain sort of time period, everything was combined sewers. More latterly, developments have tended to be foul and surface water, separate systems, but as long as that surface water has somewhere that it can go as well, which in some cases there isn't always a large brook that doesn't flood right next to a development. It's a perfect place to go, and that's where some of the challenges, not only around combined storm overflow operation, but also flooding can happen as well.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. You sort of like give us a swerve ball in the end because we were all going to have a go at you about sewers and poo and things like that, and then you sort of say you're doing all this wonderful things. So I mean, obviously you probably worked out we have a list of questions. So the question I was going to ask was: is there more that United Utilities could do to improve water quality in South Ribble? However, you mentioned a few other bits and pieces like catchment areas and things like that. So one of the things that interested me a few years ago was, for instance, water butts. They're good on their first fill, and if you don't empty them, pointless. So I do know that you have smart water butts. So just for the audience, a smart water butt will detect whether the rain is coming and empty the water butt before it rains. So therefore you catch that sort of water. So it's just on that sort of thing. Obviously, grey water systems. And I have to admit, I'm the chair of the Climate Emergency Task Group. So and I appreciate your kind words about the team that sort of work with us. And obviously, we would like to encourage an attendance of some degree. So we'll work on that outside of it. So what can we all do together? I think is probably the question now of how to improve water quality in South Ribble.
So I think. I guess there's a couple of things. So I think, as we heard earlier, quantity and quality is a real challenge. I'd shown you some lovely pictures of some huge Olympic-sized concrete tanks, massive emissions as a result of building those, and concrete and disruption and dust and everything else. And they will also be in the ground for the next 60 to 100 years. And the electricity to empty those every time it rains will also be in our bills for the next 60 to 100 years. So things like the smart water butts that are actually above ground, if you imagine 1,000 properties with those that operated in that way, it does the same job, and that's something we're really keen on. But the challenge there is around community engagement. So the first resident there that has all that lovely engagement from ourselves around the need for this water butt and what it does, but the next person that moves in has to understand that and be part of that kind of culture as well. I think the other collective ambition that we particularly have is around. I recognise it's difficult for me saying this, particularly in an era of storm overflows, but customer behaviour in terms of wet wipes and blockages. I have 23 vehicles that you may see driving around the region, and and they cost £250,000 each, and their predominant job is to respond to blockages or sewer collapses and prevent homes and businesses flooding when that happens. So that collective push around what not to flush down sewers and recognising that actually it is, you know, disposal of human and businesses, it is not just a dumping bin, it's something that we also would really want to collectively push as well with that message.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you. Just on the last point that you made, do you have engagement with the business networks? Because what I'm thinking about is we have really sizable business interests in South Ribble. You know, I'm thinking of Leyland Trucks, for example, and BAE. And I just wonder, there is a business network, and I wondered whether you were tapped into that, and if not, would you like to be?
We're not currently tapped into that, but absolutely, we'd like to be, yeah. So let me know.
Councillor Jackson, you still want to come in? Oh, sorry, right, brilliant. Where are we next? So your question number 7.
Question number 7, yeah. Is that the one? What legal framework does United Utilities operate with regards to discharging sewerage into rivers? Had any enforcement action taken place, and have you had any fines in the impact in South Ribble for the impact in South Ribble? Is that clear? Okay.
Yeah. So
I think you've answered part of it.
So yeah, so I think you know, as fundamentally from an environmental perspective, we have legal permits that we are duty bound to operate by, and that is you know, really strong and active regulation by the Environment Agency is absolutely critical for that environment that we all want. So that is a real aspect of that. And again, I think as was mentioned earlier, unfortunately we did have an issue not too far away where we ended up doing an enforcement undertaking which obviously will benefit the environment as well. But we take legal and regulatory compliance very seriously. We have multiple lines of assurance in our operations. I'm personally out every Tuesday visiting my teams across the region, doing site inspections, looking through records and everything else that we do as well. So really, really robust. We also have layers of internal assurance and corporate audit. We also have third-party independent auditors that do audits for major international banks, and then we also have completely separate independent regulation by the Environment Agency as well. So there's a very, very strong legal and regulatory framework that sits behind the water industry.
Councillor Pritchard, please.
We've been thinking about some of the national responses to some of the issues that we're talking about this evening. How do you balance the needs of our residents, obviously your customers, and regulators with those of the shareholders, please?
Yeah, so I think it's you know, it's a really, really important point, and the question is that a lot of the all the investment that we've spoke about is ultimately being driven by you know, is supported by shareholders but funded by customers essentially, and that is due to the scale and of the borrowing that's required to ultimately you know, leverage that investment to drive those environmental improvements. And it's the same as the kind of the house analogy. Obviously we are borrowing against the value of all them assets to drive those improvements, and that will be paid off over the next 60 to 70 years. What I would say is the framework around shareholder returns is very tightly governed as well around rates of return. It's also really important to know that a lot of our shareholders are actually pension funds for a lot of kind of local government as well. So that is where predominantly our shareholders are. What I would say is I think it's not for me and my role, however senior in the organisation, to comment on kind of nationalisation and all those challenges. What I believe is through the environment that we've got now and the regulatory mechanisms that exist, we've absolutely got the platform to deliver for the environment and shareholders. and make sure ultimately we're delivering for customers here as well.
Can I bring in Councillor Stringfellow, please?
Thanks for that. I was going to ask about how you work in partnership with the Environment Agency, but I think we've heard a lot about that now, and I think it seems that you work very well together from what I can hear. But it was mentioned earlier, this is a different question really, it's about the Sewage Map UK website, and somebody had been monitoring it, and in the last 3 days there'd been 3 spillages locally, so one in the River Darwen in Walton Liddell, Bannister Brook in Leyland, which is not far from here, and Taracar Gutter on Longton Marsh. Now, he said that I think there'd been £750,000 put into putting that right, particularly the Taracar Gutter. But what advice or reassurance can we give to local residents there that that will soon be sorted out, or will it continue to spill there?
So I think there's probably a couple of things. So I think our data is updated every sort of 15 minutes and live on the portal. That data is also extracted from that website and goes on multiple other websites as well to inform, you know, members of the public and customers about what is happening around storm overflows. So we're really keen in terms of you know, kind of made great strides in terms of data transparency. So there's live data, but there's also various spreadsheets that can be downloaded of everything that's on that, and that is all on our system as well. And we'll make sure we transfer the link after this to where people can get that from. I think in terms of particularly issues such as Taracar Gutter, we've been working really closely with Groundworks as part of kind of Douglas Catchment Partnership, really under the Turning Tides banner, which is the partnership that exists across the Northwest to drive bathing water quality. That's identified a number of issues in terms of Taracar Gutter. Longton wastewater treatment works is one of the treatment works there. We have a project there which we'll be delivering by the end of by 2030. So that is currently being scoped up as well. What we're also looking to do as part of that is understand the flooding in the wider Longton catchment and what can we do to help with that, as well as reduce storm overflows as well. That may or may not include sustainable urban drainage schemes or surface water separation. So ultimately that will play a part in improving water quality in Taracar Gutter. I don't have the exact data hand, but in general across Lancashire, the pressures on our water environment and improvement, they won't be resolved just by ourselves. It means that from another lens, from an Environment Agency perspective, but also working with farmers as well, we need to identify you know, an array of improvements to make the difference to watercourses, particularly Taracar Gutter.
Thanks for that. I mentioned earlier to the Environment Agency the Pendleton Brook discharge in the last 48 hours, which was for 11 hours, 12 minutes. This is happening when there's been very little rainfall. It's quite it's the warmest day of the year so far. It's been a warm week. Why would there be a discharge for 11 hours, 12 minutes? And as we speak, there's not far from here, it's not in South Ribble, it's in Preston, but Savick Brook, there's a discharge happening now. It's been doing for the last hour. So why would that be happening with the weather as it is at the moment?
So there's probably a couple of things there. So our storm overflow map updates every 15 minutes, and that alerts to basically what's happened in the last 24-hour period. When I checked the map earlier, just while I was waiting to come on, the overflow, particularly at Pendleton Brook, that I looked at hadn't operated. So it could have been rainfall from a couple of days ago that has caused that issue. Looking at some of the general statistics for Lancashire, 5.7 mil of rainfall had occurred when I looked at the rainfall in the last sort of 24-hour period before I left the office in Warrington. So we can have quite long drain down catchments. We can also have, when you look at the map of the Preston catchment and how it ranges from over in Lytham right up to Grimsby and Longridge, it's a huge geography that can be impacted by either localised rainfall or other things that happen. So I think there's always questions that we need to ask, particularly around, you'll have heard also this evening around dry day spills. And that is when overflows operate, when there hasn't been a certain amount of rainfall in the catchment as well. that is highlighted and flagged to my operational team in our hub over at Samlesbury. That is investigated every morning, and we understand what is happening with those and then investigate as well. So what I would say is it's not one direct answer, but it's a, you know, it's a complex picture when we need to investigate what is happening.
So, Councillor Martin.
I thought you might carry it on, but I'll do it anyway. Okay, so you provide us with the storm overflow performance and other figures, and you mentioned, we've already mentioned hours of operation. So and the reduction of hours of discharge is good, but we don't know whether last year's discharge was a pint an hour, or this year's discharge is 10 cube an hour. So how do you actually monitor the outfall in quantity? Because I mean, because you could have something trickling for ages, and you know.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. As an industry standard, and as the assets that have been built over the time, unfortunately, they've not been built to calculate volume of discharge. So we deal with that in a number of ways. So new schemes that are delivered will receive a new legal permit from the Environment Agency, which will also include a spill frequency threshold, which will essentially be a site over a 10-year average period should spill no more than X times. If not, if it does, some sort of investigation or other action plan is required to return that site to compliance as well. To come up with those thresholds and what's required for the environment, it does take into account modelled volumes. So we can model the rainfall into a catchment, the runoff, and what that roughly looks like, but it's not something that's monitored regularly. But that is where the importance of the WINET programme, so all the projects that we're delivering, the modelling approach that goes in there to ultimately achieve those water quality standards. So you've seen WFD as an example. In some of the Environment Agency's work, the schemes will be modelled on the improvement they need to do, and that has an inherent level of volume as well.
How would we give that info, or assure our residents that it's not 8 cubes for 3 hours and a trickle for 11? How? Because obviously we some of them are watching this, and we have people here that will go and talk to other people. So we just sort of wondered how could we as a group sort of say it's working, even though we don't really know ourselves.
It's really difficult, if I'm honest, because we don't have that data. And you're right, it could be a really intense rainfall event and it's significant, or it could be a trickle, and we don't have that. And that is why, particularly around the hours, why we report both count and hours as almost a proxy to kind of give that view and information as well.
Can I bring in Councillor Stringfellow, please?
I've not got any more questions now.
Councillor Jackson?
I don't think this question's quite appropriate now, so I'll just leave it. But there is another question I'd like to ask at the end.
Oh, at the end.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask it now?
Well, it's about something totally different, and I can see in the minutes there's opportunity for us to ask other questions.
Is there any other questions from members of the committee?
You were talking about how many more people you're going to take on. Could you just remind me of that number again, please, that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so in Lancashire directly, we're recruiting for another 50 roles. Across the region, that's another 300.
Okay.
But our organisation is also growing significantly in our construction teams as well. So we're growing over the last couple of years around about another 2,000 people. That's supporting, we've estimated around another 30,000 jobs in the Northwest in terms of creation, because in designing the schemes, we're also having to build the schemes, so we need more labourers, engineers, ground workers as well. So really significant. And I think the biggest thing that we've done recently is just launched our graduate and apprenticeship schemes as well.
That's what I was going to talk to you about.
So our intake, I think, is the largest we've ever done. I'll go for the figure and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 115.
well done.
Yes, there you go. So 150 new apprentices and graduates joining the organisation. So everything from data analysts to operators to customer technicians to billing to legal. So we have a lot of roles and a lot of opportunity.
So when are the applications open?
So we'll share all the links to all of everything there.
Is it within the next 6 months?
Shall I jump in there? The application's just closed actually for the apprentice scheme.
Right.
Whereas probably about a month ago, I would suggest. But clearly, next year we'll probably be doing the same again.
So when do you start?
I would encourage people to look at our website. It's a really good web page with all the information about the application process and the roles available. Start looking at that in the autumn time, and it'll be a good time to time those applications. I think the graduate scheme is in a few months' time. From memory, we will confirm this on email to you, but we'll get you those timelines.
Because it's really important. We're thinking about the young people, aren't we? And their ages. Are you taking them from 18 or? I know you've just mentioned graduates, so that's 21, isn't it? Do you take younger people on apprenticeships?
Yes, so we do. So we've got, school leavers at 16 who've joined the team and are out there working on our sort of treatment works as well. They also go through we have a dedicated training centre down in Bolton. So we put them through lots of training courses in terms of MVQs and all of those elements as well to make sure they're learning on the job as well up until they're 18.
Thank you. Any more questions from members on committee? No. Any questions from members not on committee? I'll go with Councillor Bollenberg this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I've only got a few questions. I think they'll be relatively simple. In no particular order, you mentioned UV treatment, but you also said that isn't installed at all plants. I'm just wondering why, because it seems like it would be such a good idea to kill the bacteria as it comes out.
So ultraviolet treatment is so it's predominantly around assets that can have a direct impact on bathing waters, and that is designated bathing water locations across the northwest. We do what's known as coastal modelling, so we look at the impact of discharges on bathing water environments, and then the investment is targeted there essentially. But as we've seen over the last couple of years, designated bathing waters doesn't always mean the seaside. So we've got, particularly in this region as well, up at Eddisford Bridge, there's inland bathing waters and other locations that do come up. And what we then do is kind of plan to what we need to do to improve the water quality treatment at those sites.
Thank you. So in effect, you'll be adding more of those UV treatments, I guess.
Yeah, so depending on the what happens in terms of designated bathing water schemes and areas, that is one thing that we would look at as well. It's not the only treatment type and technology that provides that as well. There's lots of other different things. We're looking at some interesting technology down at Wigan Treatment Works, which is really important here because it comes right up through the River Douglas as well. So different technologies are available now, but predominantly at the minute it's UV.
Thank you. Move on to my next question. The website you've shared, which shows all the different, the current statuses of the CSOs, was really interesting. So naturally, being a Bamber Bridge West councillor, I looked at my site and happy to say that Havelock 1 is registering as not outflowing at the moment. But there are only 2 within the ward. I'm wondering, are there more that aren't showing because they haven't got, and I know you can't answer this question necessarily now in this level of detail, but are there likely to be more that aren't showing on that map because they haven't got sensors? Because you said there will be a big push to add more sensors.
I'll do this. Yeah. So I think so as you've seen there, we've got a programme around installing monitors on emergency overflows. They predominantly operate in emergency scenarios. So when there has been a mechanical failure of a piece of equipment, or there has been a power failure, predominantly. So the focus over the last probably 5 or so years has been on storm overflows that operate when there is rainfall. So we've achieved 100% coverage across the region of those. The figure's around about 2,495 across the entire northwest as well. So that is what we're doing. Occasionally we do investigations, particularly around flooding, where we can find different connections and various other things. But what we do is we then work through that with the Environment Agency, where we might need to do a permit application or additional monitoring, or in some cases, you know, we might do an alternative scheme there as well. But yeah, up to now, 100% coverage on storm overflows.
Thank you. That's really good news. And my last question, and I should have asked the Environment Agency this as well, and I apologise. Where do you stand on citizen monitoring of rivers?
So I think one of the things is the more monitoring and data we have, the better it is for the environment. So, and particularly citizen science has a has a huge place to, as long as it's kind of trained and collected and analysed in the right way, and it's good data to make decisions off, it's fantastic. And I think there's lots of local groups that we've worked with to collect all of that data as well. One of my sort of personal hobby horses is how do you then collate all of that with data from the Environment Agency, ourselves, other things that are coming down the line. So over the next 5 years, we'll actually be installing real-time water quality monitors. So these are technology and probes that sit within the watercourses, upstream and downstream of treatment works and overflows. We can provide a list of that if there's any in this particular area, or Lancashire to yourself as well. And that will again be going live on a portal. But I guess in combination with everything there, we get a lot better picture of what is happening in the water environment, and then ultimately, whatever the cause is, make some improvements to that.
Thank you very much. I'll probably be in touch about the citizen monitoring.
Councillor Pillinger.
Thank you. You probably overheard when I was asking questions of your predecessors, the Environment Agency, who I am anyway. Does road surface water drainage go straight into the river, or does it go... So I live near Schleswig Way, the Lostock's running there. Does the water go straight into the river, or does it go to some sort of treatment?
I'd have to check and come back to you exactly where that goes to. In some cases, it will go into the combined sewer network, so that can be a real challenge. In some cases where it's probably more modern roads, yes, it can go direct to watercourse.
And the fact that there's a lot of tyre pieces and things like that on the road means it's okay to put it straight into the river?
It's probably not an area of expertise that I can comment on right now. I think it's just potentially it is another pressure on the water environment, yes, which we at the right point in time will need to collectively deal with together.
Right. Okay, thank you. My water bills have gone up by about a third in the last couple of years. I hope that's doing some good. In 2022, I think it was in The Guardian that you were described, United Utilities was described as the worst polluting United Kingdom water company, and 10 of the 20 most polluting pipes that spilled the most sewage were owned by United Utilities. In 2023, over 1/3 of United Utilities overflows discharge raw sewage 60 times or more. And in 2024, 10 million litres of raw sewage were pumped into Windermere, which I guess you know all about. Are you doing any better? Are you still the worst in the country?
So I think we'll be, we're sort of waiting to see when all of the results across the kind of industry and across the UK get published. We're not quite certain where we'll be in terms of our numbers, but some of the numbers I've presented today in terms of reductions we've done in South Ribble, they are replicated across the region as well. So that is really significant in terms of the improvements that we're driving. We've still got a long way to go as well. So against our 60% reduction target by 2030, we are going to be around about 42% of that at the end of this year, we're anticipating. So clearly some more to go, and particularly around Windermere as well. We've got a £200 million project all around Lake Windermere, looking at further reducing storm overflow discharges into Lake Windermere.
Thank you. I won't tell you what I think about paying dividends to shareholders with that sort of performance. I wouldn't expect you to comment.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the public on Councillor Forrest? Sorry.
Yeah.
Alderman Forrest.
Thank you. First of all, let me compliment you. You're a couple of impressive blokes. Thank you very much for what you've said to me tonight. Everybody I've heard from tonight's building up my confidence in the water industry. Question. The government white paper recommends that you should now become statutory consultees. I've suggested to the leader of this council that we should steal an advance on the white paper and approach you and ask you if you would be prepared to be statutory consultees. I don't know whether you're in a position to answer that question, but would you welcome being statutory consultees from South Ribble Planning?
I'll go out on a limb at the risk of getting told off when I get back in the office tomorrow, but absolutely is what I would say. And that's from a number of lenses, so both influencing what we can do from a water efficiency perspective as well. So with new developments that we've mentioned, grey water reuse or actually rainwater harvesting, actually that's fantastic use that can be done locally. And also particularly around the benefits that would allow us in terms of spatial planning and reducing future flood risk as well. So that's probably my personal opinion. But yeah, absolutely.
With your leave, sir, may I ask another? Clearly, I mean, the amount of water going into your sewage treatment works is a crucial question. And each of us, I gather, discharges about 150 litres of water a day into the sewers. The thing that crossed my mind when I was looking at it was, why did it take me 78 years to realise that my old toilet downstairs flushed 13 litres, whereas the dual flush that I've installed upstairs only uses 4 to 6 litres? Can we not do a lot more in terms of public education to try and I'm not saying we should get ourselves down to the Danish 80 litres. I suspect the Danes are a bit smelly, perhaps I shouldn't be quoted in this, but only 80 litres, as opposed to the Americans, I gather, who use 370 litres a day. Can you lot do something in terms of educating the public to use less of our precious, beautiful water?
Absolutely, and I think so. One of the things that, and again, in a similar way, we storm overflows as well. We've got a lot to do ourselves around leakage and reduction as well of leakage. So we are increasing, we're investing heavily in rehabilitating our pipes, putting new pipes in across the region to reduce leakage, and also our response to all of that as well. Very similar to what we're doing on wastewater with monitors and everything else. But really from a customer perspective, we've just created a new directorate all around reducing water demand. And that is right across the system as well. What they are looking at is all around that customer comms element around how to use less water, water efficiency devices, as Ian's mentioned, really working with schools and big users around water audits as well, and particularly big businesses, because all of that can have a huge impact as well. And with climate change as well, the changing nature of rainfall and what that does for our water resources is really critical. So it's something we're acutely aware of, and we're working on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably the last thing to add on to what Simon's just said there is we've actually got there's regulation around that now in terms of us being targeted to get people to reduce the amount of water they use. So that's a direct target from it's called per capita consumption, and we have targets to hit on that. So you will start to see bigger campaigns and more messaging on in that regard to try and get to those targets, without a doubt.
I was reading at the weekend. So that's a sobering thought, isn't it?
Thank you very much, Ian and Simon, for your time this evening. Very much appreciated. You're welcome to stay for the remainder of the evening, or you can leave. It's up to you. We've just got a bit more business to take care of. Darren, can you sum up, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from the discussion that the committee might like to recommend this evening. The committee thanks the representatives of the Environment Agency and United Utilities for attending, giving a great presentation and answering questions. The committee notes the reduction in the number of sewage discharges in South Ribble over the past 3 years, but expresses concern at the high number of discharges remaining and requests that more work be done to reduce the number further and improve water quality in the borough. The committee is grateful for the offer of further information on the verified discharge figures, flood and water hub and the flood water hub websites, catchment opportunity collaboration projects, funding opportunities to reduce rainwater reaching the sewage system, and water quality probes in the borough. The committee asks that the council's cabinet member for planning consider future water storage as part of strategic and local planning, and also include United Utility as a statutory consultee. And the committee provides further information to United Utilities on the South Ribble Business Network and other opportunities to promote water in the borough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren. Are members of the committee happy with them recommendations? Would they like to add any? No? Brilliant. Thank you very much. We're now moving on to item 6, committee matters. 6A, Child Sexual Exploitation Task Group. The task group is trying to arrange for a representative from Lancashire County Council to come along, and then following that meeting we're hoping to be in a position to draft the report. Has anybody got any comments to make on that? No, thank you. Item 6B, Lancashire County Council Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee. Please can I ask Councillor Lou Jackson for an update, and thank you very much for circulating the minutes of the last meeting.
Good evening, everyone. We're very conscious of the time now, and yeah, the minutes have been circulated, so I would ask you to note those minutes, please. But for people who aren't on our committee, I'd just like to give the 5 main points that were enclosed. The meeting covered areas of the CQC's improvement and adult and health and wellbeing services transformation. It covered proposed bed reductions at Royal Lancaster Infirmary, also the Health and Adult Services Work Programme 2025 to 26, and a report of the Health Scrutiny Steering Group and the Joint Health and Scrutiny Committee Shaping Care Together programme. So I would ask you to note that, please. There was an additional meeting on March the 4th, and there was a very interesting report by Dr. Sackvey, Director of Health and Wellbeing and Communities for Lancashire. The report outlined the development of a neighbourhood development plan for LCC and how health and adult service, social care and community sector partnerships responded to the 25-26 winter pressures. This is supported by a collective response to supporting Lancashire residents to avoid staying in hospital, and for those in hospital to leave in good time. The Neighbourhood Health and Development Plan he talks about aims to establish a coordinated approach across communities to achieve better outcomes. And to manage demands, and the focus is, with the new plan, it focuses on prevention, value for money and health and social care partnerships. The National Health Development Plan will facilitate local service integrations, reinforce place-based approaches and empower residents to maintain their health and independence. The aim of the plan is to enable the council and its partners to support residents to live well, independently and for longer in their own homes. It also considers the future effects of local government reorganisation, but he had to say the programme is in its early stages at this moment in time. And I must mention the NHS Acute Trust in Lancashire escalated to operational pressures escalation level, which you will probably know as Opal 4 this winter. And to mitigate this, there was collaboration of the NHS, the Adult Services Care, voluntary services, in-house provider services, and implementation of bespoke and responsive new ways to enable the hospital to recover from Opal 4. The measures they put in place included a social worker in emergency departments, refreshing the care navigation approach used, in-house provider services with step-down beds, a focus on days kept away from home, and the voluntary service approach strengthened to support the non-complex discharges. There was also early warning of pressures that were to come and escalations, which helped in preparation and a review of risk management and winter pressure, and there was a winter pressure exercise. So that's the two LCC meetings. Myself, I am governor, a hospital governor for the Lancashire hospitals, and in February I attended an observer of a directors meeting. It began with the chief nursing officer giving a talk, which was very interesting, about cancer diagnostics and waiting times, followed by a discussion of how the deprived communities have persons who access cancer care late. So this led on to an analysis of health inequalities and how risk scores have remained static since 2024. So they decided there was going to be an action. So there was a request for a workshop to take these figures into consideration, and also set up an executive director to executive director group to consider best practice from hospital to hospital. There's also a staff survey due now in March to compare ourselves to the national average. When I say to compare ourselves, I'm talking about the Lancashire hospitals comparing themselves to other hospitals. A following discussion ensued on workforce education, employment and research, and improvement of leadership, how improvement of leadership is helping to retain staff, but this is to be monitored. They talked about the current number of vacancies to be released. There's also discussion on ultrasound and sonography, and how the Lancashire hospitals will develop their own staff to provide these services, but they acknowledge that these positions in ultrasound and sonography are very attractive to the private sector, but we want to keep them. Talked about AI is being devolved and deployed and validated to bring down waiting lists. We talked about a gender pay gap, because 75% of the workforce in the hospitals are women, and men who work in the hospitals are paid an average of 1.9% more. So this was acknowledged. So we talked about ethnicity and service, disabilities. There was a discussion on how communication with all sectors of the community is very important, and the language we use on how we communicate is really, really important. So we talked about education, training and research, and this is mandatory training, but it was acknowledged that the training isn't reaching all levels of staff. The hospital realises this, and that offering lifelong training and its compliance relates to better quality of care. Apprenticeships, apparently Lancashire hospitals, the performance and achievement rates are exemplary and are seen as a centre of educational excellence. interestingly, at the end, the performance productivity report, the hospital declares the ambulance has when people are received into hospital from an ambulance, it's a 45-minute handover. And the aims are for a 4-hour waiting time. And also the aims are to utilise 80% of the virtual wards. These are coming online now and are being used more and more. However, they did say that planned care remains off track. Follow-up care remains above target with significant reductions of waiting lists. And this takes into consideration the backlog factor. Cancer targets will be hit by the end of March. The vacancy rates are up 7%, not 70%. If you remember, there was a hospital financial deficit of £60 million within the last year. This is now down to 25.5 million, and the main drivers of this are waste reduction, operational pressures, and the government's deficit support. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Jackson. Is there any questions from members of the committee? No, thank you very much for that. Very informative. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Moving on to item 6C, meetings and training attended by Scrutiny Committee members. Has anybody attended any training? I don't think. Anybody else? No? Brilliant. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much to all councillors for your attendance. Thank you.